Into session, call to order. We are returning to open session. I'd like to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand and join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to read a statement before we begin public comment. On Tuesday, in accordance with the superintendent's contract, I exercised the authority of the chair to place the superintendent on paid administrative leave after the revelation of the district's significant budget deficit. In my judgment, this was in the best interests of the district, and further would be consistent with the best practices should this committee seek a formal investigation into the matter. The full committee will be reviewing and voting on whether to keep that leave in place later in this meeting, as well as whether the matter should be investigated. As we enter public comment, I wish to remind everyone that according to our policy, public comment is limited to 20 minutes total. There are two sessions, one in the beginning of the meeting and another at the end. Each person who wishes to comment I would ask them to state their name and residential address, including the city of town of residence. I ask everyone consider the others that may want to speak. And actually, could I just ask if the folks who are lined up are the ones that wish to speak at the beginning of the meeting? Is there anyone else? Can somebody give me an approximate idea how many people there are? 20, 30, 10? 20? Okay, so I would
maybe
ask...
30.
30, okay. So what I would ask is that folks limit themselves to the matters that are in front of us tonight, according to the agenda, and that not do a lot of repeating, because, once it's been stated, it's been stated. Further, I really want to urge everyone to understand that look at the agenda ahead, notice the items that we'll be discussing tonight, as many of the questions that you may have are likely to be addressed during the meeting. There will be a second, as I said earlier, there'll be a second public comment session at the end of the meeting. And last but not least, a reminder that public comment is not a discussion, debate, or dialogue between citizens and the school committee. It is a citizen's opportunity to express their opinion on issues of school committee business. The committee may respond to a public comment by taking it under consideration when deliberating on an agenda item or referring the item to the administration for appropriate action or response. Public comment shall be, as I said, 20 minutes, with speakers being allowed up to 3 minutes to present their individual material. But again, I'd ask your considerations to the items I mentioned before. And with that, we will have public comment. Welcome.
Welcome. Andrew McDevitt, 266 Barker Street. It was not my intention to come back to a school committee meeting so soon. Especially after last year's contract negotiations, I hope it is not lost on anyone that I am sitting and stand with NADA and district leadership in support of Dr. Gilligan. I strongly encourage you to return him as superintendent. Let me be clear, this is a major deficit. Over $3 million is not insignificant money. Nearly all of this spend is required by law. This budget situation is not unique to North Andover, nor is this year an anomaly. In my 12 years, we hired 3 superintendents and negotiated 5 contracts. Section D of the superintendent's contract is in place for a true emergency. School committee must post all meetings 48 hours in advance. Section D was established as an urgent measure to place the superintendent on leave until a meeting can be scheduled, such as tonight. It was intended for dealing with something illegal, disastrous, or embarrassing to the town, giving the committee the ability to take immediate legal action. A budget shortfall is not that case. The chair and vice chair took action on Tuesday without school committee knowledge or support. You acted alone. This week there have been select board, FinCom, and now a school committee meeting. The perfect time to question what happened. So what will we learn? We will not hear from Dr. Gilligan. I would hope that you would all have questions for him. I know I would have at least one quick question. Conveniently, the buck now stops at Dr. Mealy, and you can't touch him. Twice this week and again tonight, Dr. Mealy is going to explain how we got here and the path to recovery. He's been grilled, and he's taken responsibility. Drs. Gilligan, Mealy, town manager, and her team have developed this plan. It's been supported by the Select Board and FinCom. They've spent countless hours on it, and it is the path out of this financial challenge. It's hard, but it's fiscally responsible. You should thank them. Actually, thank them. Do not forget, these expenses are services and teachers that were provided to the students who need them most. Maybe it highlights North Andover's funding on education or lack of. I support new policies and procedures and monthly instead of quarterly budget updates. Trust me, we're all angry about learning about this now. I hope I'm wrong, but there may soon be a new superintendent search. You, of course, realize there's a cost for that, right? Tuesday's action was a hasty one, but you can try to make this right. Restore Dr. Gilligan as superintendent. We teach our children it's okay to be wrong. Say sorry and mean it. Being a leader isn't doing the easy thing, it's doing the right thing. Mr. Chair, you just wanted a fall guy. Be a leader tonight. Be the lesson. Thank you.
Please.
Juliette Darmon, North Andover resident at 32 Clarendon Street and North Andover Teachers Association president. I have here a letter to share with you that has been signed by the current NATA leadership and NSEA leadership, but also by past NATA leadership. Some of them are here tonight and are standing right here with me, and some unfortunately could not, but wanted to make sure their names were attached to this letter, and I will read their names at the end of the letter. We, the undersigned current and past presidents, vice presidents, chairs of the North Andover Teachers Association and the North Andover Custodial Association, are writing in support of Dr. Greg Gilligan and in opposition to naming an interim superintendent. We feel that we have a unique perspective as both staff in the district. We work directly with students and see the everyday needs in our schools, and also as elected representative of the staff working side by side with school administration and at times members of the school committee. We are aware of a deficit for the current fiscal year and understand that the sum is significant. But we also understand that the majority of the deficit is related to legally mandated expenses. These are expenses that were unavoidable regardless of who was the superintendent at the time. In light of this, we are surprised and upset to see that the school committee has planned an agenda item indicated a possible leave of absence for Dr. Gilligan and possible appointment of an interim superintendent. We feel that Dr. Gilligan and his team are the best equipped to solve this problem and are already on the path of doing so. This is why it seems perplexing for the school committee to consider installing an interim superintendent during a time of financial crisis. Although you may fault Dr. Gilligan for not communicating the breadth of the problem in a timely manner, it is clear that he has taken time to define the full scope of the problem and has worked with his team and has used the relationships he built with leaders in town to find a solution. Additionally, Dr. Gilligan and his team have already planned to start monthly budget meetings with the town manager to make sure communication issue doesn't happen again. In our opinion, taking the time to define a problem and collaboratively working to find a solution is a mark of a good leadership. Just as Dr. Gilligan has demonstrated not only during this situation, but also in the past, during his handling of the gas explosions, COVID-19, and many other smaller crises. A leader who comes forward not just with problems, but also with solutions is something you should be grateful for, not someone you are looking to place on leave. We believe that relieving Dr. Gilligan of his position and appointing an interim superintendent would be both reactionary and short-sighted.
If you could please, you're at over 3 minutes.
I will be fast.
Thank you.
The deficit is a problem that was possibly poorly communicated, but unavoidable given that the majority of expenses were legally mandated. We believe that the best course of action, both short-term and long-term, is to allow Dr. Gilligan to use his experience, his leadership team, and his relationships he has fostered with town leaders in order to correct the deficit. And we oppose any plan to remove him from his position. This was signed by myself, Kathleen Terrace, Ginny Burns, Debbie Rafali, here present, Pat Gagny, Grazia Donahue, Doug, Bill Brady, Jane Broderick, Ryan Landry, Lisa Rassanen, here present, and Bill Smith. I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Kathleen Terrace, 19 May Lane, Pelham, New Hampshire. I am a science teacher here at North Andover Middle School. I am also the union vice president in grievance. North Andover has underfunded the school district for decades. It is a fact that we have pointed out over and over again and spotlighted during negotiations. Dr. Gilligan and Dr. Mealy have worked magic building strong programs to meet student needs through creative problem solving. We should feel fortunate to have these leaders who guided us for so long without faltering. Instead of playing the blame game, we need to admit when we were giving the exact number, whether it was February or April 2nd, the problem still existed. Our community is underfunding the school system. This was bound to happen. In fact, I'm surprised it hasn't happened sooner. Right now, we should be focused on keeping our administration in place to help steer us through these difficult times. This is not a unique situation to North Andover. The fact is, this is occurring in neighboring towns across the state of Massachusetts and the nation. Specifically, Oxford and Georgetown are both looking for multi-million-dollar overrides, and these school systems are funding their schools at a healthy per-student rate. I think it would be short-sighted to have a knee-jerk reaction when there is a solution already identified. School committee, let our leaders who have the experience and work with us to guide us through these times. I asked that they not be removed. Dr. Gilligan and Dr. Mealy, I want to thank you for your fearless leadership. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, good evening, everyone. Sean Kevlan, 75 Nutmeg Lane in North. Thank the school committee, all volunteers. A lot of planning board, or a lot of boards. It takes a lot of work.
The microphone so
sorry.
at home can hear you.
Yep. Perfect. So I want to remind everyone what a superintendent's role is. First, obviously, to educate our children, right? That's number one. Number two is identify resources to educate our children. And then once resources are obtained, to stay within a budget. That's it. Not to sound reductive, but that's what it is at the end of the day, right? Now, mistakes happen. Things happen over the course of a fiscal year. But it's on leadership to, as a fiduciary to the town, to manage a budget and disclose when things are happening. What happened was there wasn't disclosure for 4 months on a nearly, now it's 3.2 million, but it's actually more than that. It's closer to 4.5. And you know who discovered the $4.5 million overage? Not Dr. Gilligan, the town accountant. So tell me where leadership is if you're a fiduciary to the town. That is a failure of leadership. And I implore the school committee, given that you have the jurisdiction, to hold people accountable, specifically Dr. Gilligan. The administration has failed, period. They have failed in their duty as a fiduciary to the town and the taxpayers. So, as I mentioned, I implore the school committee to take action, hold the administration accountable. That is within your purview and your jurisdiction, especially it is not an immaterial number. This is $4.6 million. We can argue whether or not schools are underfunded or not, but if you're not managing against a budget, what does it matter? And there was no management on a budget, and it's a failure administration. Furthermore, I'd request, given the light that there's a $4.6 million overage, the town and the school committee should recommend an independent audit of the schools at this point, because this is a lack of leadership, and we don't know where the money is being appropriated or allocated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jillian Connolly. I live at 659 Waverly Road. I am the school counselor at the Annie L. Sargent Elementary School. I am also the mother of 2 children who will attend the North Andover Public Schools. I speak to you tonight to share my heartbreak and disdain for how Chairperson Brown placed Dr. Gilligan on administrative leave. Succeeding a revolving door of previous superintendents who were unable to provide the consistency required to enact lasting change, he has been faced with wildly unprecedented challenges. Through these challenges, it is clear to all NAP staff members that Dr. Gilligan always puts our children first. Focusing solely on fiscal responsibility, especially in the face of the current challenges all schools in our state and our nation are facing, will never successfully put our children first. As a resident of the town, I am of course alarmed by taxes and potholes, but those concerns will never outweigh the importance of children. For many years longer than I have lived in North Andover or worked here, Dr. Gilligan and previous superintendents have expressed concern to town officials regarding the abysmally low per pupil spending we have in town. We have always made do with less when other towns have allocated much more. In my role as the sole school counselor at the Sargent School, I have felt the constraints placed on me by this mentality more than ever during the 2023-2024 school year. As I work to support close to 500 students, I often feel inadequate and unsuccessful in my role. The gap between the social-emotional supports that I want to provide my students and what I have the time and capacity to provide grows larger and larger due to the exponential increase in students' social-emotional needs over recent years. Despite the constraints of our limited financial resources, Dr. Gilligan and his team acquired grant money to hire an SEL interventionist for the 2023-2024 school year, who currently supports our elementary schools. Now, 2 days a week, I feel more confident in my ability to meet my students' needs through this invaluable partnership with our interventionist. Dr. Gilligan also understands that state and federal mandates for special education, homeless student protections, and other educational policies cannot be ignored, regardless of the status of the budget. We must comply. Meeting these mandates requires funding, and if the funding isn't there, that is reflective of a system that is broken. Imagine what our district could do if it was adequately funded. As I work to model and teach our students to embody our raised values, I challenge the school committee to do the same.
I just just want to caution everybody, we have about 5 minutes left, so if you could please keep your comments non-repetitive and to the agenda items, I'd appreciate it.
This might be a little repetitive. Pam Petrowski, 73 Pleasant Street, North Andover. Recently, the school budget was identified as a significant deficit, and these deficits are attributed to vital parts of our school, of running a district. So I ask our town officials and the school committee to recognize that this is the bigger problem. Our schools are underfunded. Our schools have been underfunded, and it's time for a change. It's unfortunate that the superintendent was removed from his duties before the opportunity to answer questions and participate in problem-solving conversations. He's really good at that. This removal seems to have added to the crisis that the town is now in, that the district is now in. It's alarming that this removal was done before the school committee meeting, and thus the decision was made not by the committee, but by one newly elected person who has limited experience in education, specifically public education. While we need to hold the administrative team accountable for the budget, it is going to be difficult to do that without the leader of the team. So what was the plan? What was the end game? While I'm concerned that the budget is in a deficit, I am more concerned that the schools continue to be underfunded and that the current leadership in town does not recognize this. I'm disheartened that the chair made such a rash decision, the manner in which it was done, and all without consulting his team, his board or administrative team. I implore you to reinstate Dr. Gilligan immediately so your team can start to solve problems and plan for the district appropriately. Thank you.
Helen Picard, 447 Waverly Road. I'm also speaking on behalf of David Teresi, 1256 Osgood Street, Stan Limpert, 43 Stone Cleave, and Amy Mabley, 219 Main Street. We urge the school committee to vote to return the superintendent to all duties immediately. We recognize the serious challenge the school budget deficit presents to this community. This is a problem that requires focused attention of the full school committee, administrative team, and other leaders. We are disappointed the superintendent was suspended before he could present and answer questions at the posted open meetings of the Finance Committee on 4/24 and the School Committee on 4/25. We believe the suspension of the superintendent creates an unnecessary crisis in school leadership, in public confidence, and a distraction from solving the problem of the budget deficit. Given the information shared publicly, we have confidence that Dr. Gilligan and Dr. Mealy act in the best interest of students, the district, and the community. We believe Dr. Gilligan and Dr. Mealy are the best choices for North Andover to serve as collaborative problem solvers alongside other town leaders to address the budget deficit. Again, we urge the school committee to vote to return the superintendent to all duties immediately. Thank you.
Rebecca Strong, 657 Forest Street. Elections have consequences. In 2021, when I chose to run for an open school committee seat, my campaign messages were twofold. First was to fully support our students getting back into the classroom for in-person learning. Second was to focus on accountability and transparency of the committee and administration when it came to district spending. My opponents and their supporters chose to focus on that first message, all but ignoring the second. I've been labeled as a one-trick pony. When I brought up taking a deeper dive into district spending and scrutinizing individual line items in the budget, I have been told time and time again there was absolutely no waste and that I was just stirring the pot. I'd been told I'd be hard-pressed to find any cost savings in any line item in the entirety of the budget, and that I should trust the administration that they have been fiscally responsible. I dropped any further talk of wasteful spending, feeling completely gaslit. Fast forward to 2024, and look where we are. An over $3 million deficit, likely stemming in part from accounting that has been described to me as sloppy. As an accounting and finance professional for over 25 years, that is a term you never want to hear when reviewing financial records. Many taxpayers have lost faith in the administration after demonstrating they cannot live within a budget and have seemingly no obligation for disciplined spending. There is one bright spot in all of this. In the agenda tonight, the school committee will discuss engaging with a third-party independent auditor to delve into this fiasco. I am in support of a comprehensive audit. It is long overdue. After conversations I have had and messages that have been sent to me this week, I know many in the community share the same sentiment. As a fiscal conservative, I'm not thrilled with spending additional funds on an external audit when the responsibility should have fallen on the shoulders of elected committee members. However, at this juncture, it's a necessary step. This audit should be only the very beginning of a far more rigorous investigation of the processes, procedures, and unfettered spending that have led us to this point. I sincerely hope that the school committee will strongly consider involving the community in the third-party auditor selection process. As a community, we need to continue to demand accountability and transparency in every department, committee, and town leader. Thank you.
1 second, please. We're at time. Does the committee wish to extend the time? I'd just like to get a sense. Everybody okay with that?
Mr. Chair, there's a gentleman in a maroon sweater at the back of the line. Can we go through the entirety of the line so he speaks and have him be the last?
I think that's fine.
He's been the last one in line for the duration of the meeting.
All right, then please proceed.
Good evening, Mr. School Committee Chair Brown. My name is Chet Jackson, and I reside at 25 Surrey Drive, right here in North Andover. I'm here in my capacity as a father of three, one recent graduate of North Andover Public Schools, and two current students that are in North Andover Public Schools. I'm also here in my capacity as the principal of North Andover High School, and I've been a member of Dr. Gilligan's leadership team. I've been working at North Andover Public Schools as an administrator since 2007.
Got to adjust it a little bit. My name is Tiffany Goddard. I reside at 111 Barker Street in North Andover. I'm here as my capacity as a resident, mother of two, one of whom attends North Andover Middle School and one will be attending in a couple of years. I'm also the principal of the Ann Bradstreet Early Childhood Center and a member of Dr. Gilligan's leadership team. I've been working in North Andover Public Schools since 2019.
Good evening, Joe Clark, 29 Edmonds Road, North Andover. I'm here in my capacity as a resident and father of four, all of whom are currently in North Andover Public Schools. I am also here in my capacity as the principal of Franklin Elementary School and a member of Dr. Gilligan's leadership team. I have worked in North Andover Public Schools since 2004. We three are up here on behalf of the North Andover Public Schools administrative team, and we are here to voice our immense disappointment in the decision by this committee to put Dr. Gilligan on administrative leave. We believe this was a profound lapse in judgment. The manner in which it occurred, without any notice, interrupting a scheduled meeting with school staff present, appears calculated and cruel and does not reflect any of the values that we practice and teach to our children. A school committee couldn't find a superintendent who cares more about the students in this district than Greg Gilligan. He's proven that year after year in service to this town and its families. He has dedicated his life to education and to the betterment of our children, our community, and you can see the impact of his efforts in the turnout of staff here tonight. It will be evident that your decision to disrespect the strong efforts of a hardworking, honest, and good person was miscalculated and wrong in many ways. We strongly urge you to reconsider and rescind the leave, restoring Dr. Gilligan to his position as our school district's educational leader. While you and much of the committee are new, Dr. Gilligan has been a fixture in our school system since 1998. In his many different roles throughout the years, he has shown his support and dedication to our students. As a North Andover High School teacher and assistant principal of Thompson Elementary School, and assistant superintendent for teaching and learning, Greg Gilligan changed lives and improved student outcomes. In his 6th year as superintendent, he continues to positively impact the experiences of our students, staff, and community.
Class sizes across all of our schools have met or exceeded the school committee guidelines, which allows our children opportunities for more meaningful time and support from our teachers. The teaching staff are more skilled and experienced because of the professional development planning that Greg Gilligan and his team have designed and implemented. He has brought in outside experts to review our practices, to make recommendations, and to work closely with our school leaders to improve learning and teaching each and every day. Over the past 6 years, he has led the schools through countless crises and challenges. Most recently, COVID. The number of hours put in by Dr. Gilligan was astounding and inspiring. The demands he put on teachers to be able to provide the very best education in the most challenging of circumstances was commendable. No child was left behind or overlooked thanks to his leadership. All were included in creative and meaningful ways as we all tried to maximize learning outside and later back inside our buildings. He is still working with our team to close the learning gap created by the pandemic on our children. Unfortunately, that has required a great deal of funding, and it still does. And we find ourselves in a budget deficit like so many other school districts. At the very start of his tenure, Dr. Gilligan guided us through the aftermath of the gas explosion with aplomb. 2 very different yet successful teacher contract negotiations have taken place, which have brought our talented teachers to a more supportive salary base that will attract and retain the very best for our children. While we plan to be as conservative as we can with our budget based on the directives from Dr. Gilligan, many, many unforeseen needs and challenges are presented each year, and that causes us to pivot and spend to equitably care for our student population. We are dealing with the changing needs of children and families in a very complicated world.
Over the past 2 decades, the schools of North Andover have been underfunded compared to comparable communities. While previous superintendents have made attempts to work with town leadership to increase spending for our classrooms and our students, Dr. Gilligan has negotiated harder and more successfully for more fair per-pupil expenditures to benefit our students. It seems that the totality of the impact that Dr. Gilligan has made on our town, the schools, the families, and especially the students over his 26-year tenure at North Andover Public Schools is being ignored or overlooked. We understand that you are under pressure from others to take some action related to the budget deficit. It is our hope that you will show much more strength in character as you consider the next step in this process that you've started. We have confidence, based on his long track record of success in solving challenges, that Dr. Gilligan and his team, and this team, will collaborate to address the funding deficit, and moving forward into the next school year, the district administration will continue to lead the way in providing what students and families need to learn and grow.
And again, we speak on behalf of the North Andover Public Schools administrative team in support of our superintendent, Dr. Greg Gilligan.
May I?
Yes, please.
May I turn the mic this way?
I don't see why not.
My name is Jennifer Goldman. I've been in this town for over 14 years. As many of you know, I'm a past finance committee member. I'm a parent of a student. And I definitely feel for you teachers and the administration. However, I am here to tell you that I vote no confidence in Superintendent Dr. Gilligan. As you know, I was on the Finance Committee for several years, and during that time, we repeatedly asked Dr. Gilligan for forward-thinking budgeting and projections, and they were never provided. We need a leader that works with the state and the community, more than just a support leader to all of you, that leads with budgeting and transparency, just as you would expect your partner at home to be transparent and forthcoming on financial matters. We need that in the schools. We need that to avoid layoffs. We need that to have paras paid well, and teachers and curriculum. And the list goes on. School committee, you have my vote of confidence. Thank you for being professional, going through the steps that you need to go through to truly look at what the matter is. And I appreciate your dedication to this town and most of all, our students. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Kevin Driscoll, 86 Kingston Street, a former member and chair of the North Andover Youth and Recreation Services Council, former co-chair of North Andover Parent Resource Network, and proud parent of a current junior at North Andover High School and a graduate in the class of 2018. I'm here this evening to show my support for and stand with the school committee. Your important decision to focus attention on the ensuing ensuring the fiscal stability of our schools, taking on the current financial crisis unfolding before us in the school department, and placing the superintendent on leave. All of this done with expedience is sadly necessary and fully an appropriate set of actions. I understand the situation and those involved in it is not an easy one to deal with. Sadly, there has been a pattern of mismanagement in the school department for several years, dating back to the former superintendent, for whom the current superintendent served as an assistant. While I think most here agree, Dr. Gilligan is a good guy. He's friendly, he's charming, he's gregarious. He was a good history teacher and a change maker as the principal of Thompson School, where he served as principal. But all great principals are not destined to become good superintendents. And as we have seen on several occasions, Dr. Gilligan is simply not cut out to lead the district. I commend the school committee, including the two newest members elected only a month ago, for taking control of a situation in a timely manner and for its quick response to making necessary and much needed changes in the central office. It's been a long time coming. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Casey Kaplis. I'm a severe special education assistant teacher at Franklin School. My daughter Charlotte is a 4th grader at Franklin School. My son Marshall is a 6th grader at NAMS. We live at 38 Kingston Street, Village Green, North Andover. This is very concerning to me because we moved here in 2017 for the lauded school program here in North Andover, so I'm a little bit concerned professionally and personally moving forward for myself and my children. We live here and we work here and we learn here, and I just want to make sure that we're in a place that is fair and checks and balances are in place and not one single person is singled out for a group and a system that may be failing. I'm here tonight to support Dr. Gilligan and Dr. Mealy. What I saw in the April 22nd Select Board meeting was very concerning. It is evident from the information that Dr. Gilligan and Dr. Mealy presented to the board that even the most careful planning could not have compensated for the unprecedented overtures this year. It is truly a perfect storm. Rather than blaming our school leaders, let's take a look at where the responsibility might fall. This town underfunds its schools. According to public records, North Andover per pupil expenditure is approximately $3,000 below state average. This would equate to a total of $13.5 million lost annually. Furthermore, North Andover is approximately $1,900 below schools that are in our geographical area. This equates to approximately $8.5 million lost per year. The bottom line is North Andover is not sufficiently funding its schools, and we need to make a change. Thank you very much for your time.
Hello, my name is Melissa Barron. I live at 489 Sharpness Pond Road. I personally have worked in the middle school since 2007, co-managing the main office. I am also a North Andover resident for 31 years. My husband and I we are proud parents of 2 grown children who have gone through this district. I have also been asked to never respond to any social media comments because of my honest bluntness. I believe if you have walked in the shoes of the person that you are going to comment on, if you have not walked in the shoes of the person you are going to comment on, you shouldn't have anything to say. I was asked to watch the April 22nd meeting with reluctance, but did so because I can't have an opinion without being informed. Before I state my case, we as a town are asked to practice and teach the raised values, which may be hard at times, all the time, sometimes. But every employee, every staff member, student, and parent should practice these values every day. In watching the April 22nd meeting, Dr. Gilligan and Dr. Mealy presented the town with a budget problem that is facing us as a district, and then took ownership of that problem. Thank you for the town for working with Dr. Gilligan and Dr. Mealy on suggesting more frequent check-ins. I believe what is missing from this responsibility of the school committee is to take partial ownership of this dilemma we are in, not just washing their hands of it and placing the blame game. We all have to have checks and balances for our mistakes that may occur in the people above us and below us, which is why I believe the school committee has to also take stake in this. Instead of coming up with a plan and working with Dr. Gilligan and Dr. Mealy, Mr. Brown took it upon himself to be judge and jury by demoralizing Dr. Gilligan in front of his peers and colleagues and removing him from his seat and treating him like a criminal. Instead of asking the others in the room to excuse themselves for a moment, doing this was no way practice of a raised value, with the first letter being R as in respect. I do hope that you'll reconsider not removing these 2 gentlemen and work together moving forward for the next few years as a stronger and better district in this community. And thank you for your time.
Hi, my name is Tina Marshall. I'm at 7 Johnson Ave in Peabody, and I am a kindergarten teacher at the Ann Bradstreet Early Childhood Center. I was going to read a prepared speech, but I chose to sway off of that because I did a little research of my own, and it was just quick research, just looking around. And as many have mentioned here tonight, there are many, many towns and districts that are suffering through terrible budget deficits right now. And one that stuck out to me tremendously was Haverhill. Haverhill mentioned in March that they were at an $11.1 million deficit. That is big, big money. Not that what we're dealing with here is not. I don't put it aside as small money, but $11.1 million. Now, what got to me was the fact that they did not let go of their superintendent and put that person on any kind of leave. Instead, they worked together as a team, coming up with a system to look at where it went wrong, how it can be fixed, what they can do to get the budget down to where it needs to be down to make it survivable for everyone. Everyone in the town, the staff, everyone. That's team leadership. That's teamwork. And that's how you get things done. So it is, in my opinion, that more needs to be done, but it needs to be done in a better way. So I thank you for your time, but I also implore you to reinstate Dr. Gilligan so that he can be a part of this team that he has been a part of, so that he can also be a part of the solution that he wants to be a part of. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Sasha Weinrich, and I live at 21 Sawyer Road. I am speaking tonight on behalf of the Executive Committee of the North Andover Special Education Parent Advisory Council, otherwise known as the North Andover CPAC. Firstly, we would like to thank the district and their quick actions over the last few weeks to create a sound approach to remedy the projected deficit for FY24 so that the strategic plan of our community was not profoundly impacted. That being said, we are eager to hear the administration and school committee's solution to the projected impact on level services that is now anticipated for FY25. We implore the school committee to support CPAC in fulfilling its mandated obligation and performing both an advisory and participatory role regarding all matters that pertain to students that require IEPs and 504s in the district. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sean Quinn. I'm a 7th grade math teacher at NAMS. I'm here tonight to support Dr. Gilligan and Dr. Mealy. What I saw on April 22nd Select Board meeting was very concerning. It is evident from the information that Dr. Gilligan and Dr. Mealy presented on the board that even the most careful planning could not have compensated for the unprecedented overtures this year. It is truly a perfect storm. Rather than blaming our school leaders, let's take a look at where the responsibility might fall. This town underfunds its schools. According to the public records, North Andover public expenditures is approximately $3,000 below state average. I think you heard that before. This would equate to a total of $13.5 million lost annually. Furthermore, North Andover is approximately $1,900 below schools that are in our geographic area. This equates to approximately $8.5 million lost per year. Bottom line is North Andover is not sufficiently funding its schools. I ask that you guys reinstate Dr. Gilligan. Thank you very much.
Good evening. I'm Meg O'Neill. I live at 65 Russell Street. I'm the mother of 3 children in the district. My hope tonight is to understand how this deficit is going to impact my children and their friends. I'd like to know where these cuts are going to happen, how that's going to impact the classroom, how that's going to impact the extracurricular activities that they do, the library, things like that. In addition, I've stood before you all before asking multiple times for transparency, and I would continue to ask for that. I urge you to prioritize transparency as we move forward, focusing on remedying this situation. Thank you.
My name is Michael Liss, and I reside at 30 Leanne Drive, and I'm the father of a 1st and 4th grader in Franklin Elementary. And like I think pretty much everybody here, I was horrified at the unexpected budget deficit announced this week. As we all know, funding for our schools is tight, and multiple town boards and administrations have collectively fought an uphill battle over the last decade to increase funding and improve the quality of services and buildings at our schools. And I agree with everyone here that that has not been enough. But in what felt like a moment, years of progress have been wiped out. We will undoubtedly have to unwind a lot of the recent work that has been done. Building improvements have been put at risk, and now other already strained town departments are under increased stress to compensate for the mismanagement of our school's budget. Much of this week's select board meeting was spent detailing the specific causes of the budget overrun, as has been this comment period. And I admit that I'm not enough of an expert in municipal finance to tell you whether the overruns themselves could have been avoided. I would like to instead focus on the mismanagement of the tracking and reporting of these overruns. Running a $3+ million deficit without full knowledge of the school committee and other boards simply should not be possible. Any budget of that size needs to have frequent, detailed tracking of line items to identify overruns and either compensate or report them quickly. Implementing this should not first require the disaster that we have now. A shortfall this large never has a single point of failure, and I appreciate Dr. Mealy's attempt to accept some of the blame. but the buck stops with the superintendent, who I was disappointed to see deflecting responsibility throughout Monday's meeting. To move forward, we need confidence that the school administration takes this systemic failure seriously, and I do not feel we have that with current leadership. Placing the superintendent on administrative leave while we determine a path forward is an appropriate response, and I appreciate the school committee's ability to act. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. There's no recognition this evening, I believe. So the next item is consent items, minutes from April 4th.
Mr. Chair, I move that we accept the minutes for April 4th as presented in the packet.
Is there a second? Okay, motion is made and seconded. Any discussion? No? Not, we'll vote. Start with Ed. Okay, Kelly?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Melissa? And the chair votes yes. Minutes are accepted. All right. Next we have superintendent's report. I wonder if, Ms. Lathrop, if you can handle that for me, for us?
We want to recognize our administrative assistants. This past week was Administrative Assistant Week. We have wonderful people that work in our school offices, support the many people who work here in North Andover, and it was wonderful. We were able to celebrate them in central office, and we know each school recognized the people who work so hard behind the scenes for their students in our school.
Okay. There's an item here around the district. Is there any comment you want to make about that? No? No. Okay, thank you. Move on to the chair's report. Given the gravity of the situation in front of us, I want to express my wish to do the special education subcommittee review item next meeting so that we could focus on this. If it please the committee. No one has an objection? Okay. Next, we have the School Committee Education Hall of Fame nominations that are due April 30th. Mr. Hicks.
Yes, Mr. Chair, the Hall of Fame nominations are due April 30th. There's still time to nominate individuals who have taught in North Andover. The application packet is available on our website. I look forward to being part of that process. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next we are going to get a presentation on the fiscal year 24 budget deficit from Dr. Mealy.
Here. Oh, here you go. How about that? Must be me. I'm on a roll.
Oh, yeah, that's working.
Okay. So this is the third time I'll be giving this presentation.
Oh, no. Oh, there you go.
How about that? Yes? Yes. This week, and I do want to address some, I want to say, and I've been saying this all week, that people's anger is misdirected unless it's directed at me. I know, I think I've been doing Dr. Gilligan a disservice by taking the responsibility. I think people need to understand that this is my 15th year in the district, not my first year. And 14 years have been extremely successful, despite what some people might want to think. You can look at the history. And we have had we developed a long-term plan, a 7-year plan that got us through COVID. And we had to make adjustments to that long-term plan through COVID. We were able to implement free full-day kindergarten. which I don't know if people realize this, saves the town about $400,000. It generates about $400,000 to $450,000 a year more in revenue than we were getting, and people don't have to pay for tuition. So that's over 12 years. We are part of a TOPS program with Andover that allows us to have our students attend there instead of going out of district, and has saved us about $1 million a year over the last 11 or 12 years. And I'm not saying that as any excuse for this year. I'm just trying to establish that this year was different. I was successful for 14 years. And when I say that it's misplaced, it would be misplaced to blame Dr. Gilligan or the school committee. The process has been, for my time here, that I would report out, and that is what would happen. And so they counted on me to provide that information, and they believed me when I told them that information. The difference this year is, well, a lot of you touched on this, and it's not indiscriminate spending. All of our expenditures are for legitimate student-related services, staff. You know, people have recommended an audit. I welcome an audit. It will show where all those expenses go. We actually get audited every year by the state. The DESE conducts an audit of all expenditures that we have in a given year and files a report. And for last year, as it has been consistently, they had no findings for North Andover. But this year was different, and I think I said I did Dr. Gilligan a disservice because I was jumping in and taking the responsibility and the blame because that's where it belongs. I understand he's the superintendent, but the process we have had through all the superintendents that I have worked with has been the same, and so he was waiting for the number from me. And the other thing that, listen, I have been falling on my sword all week, and I will continue to do so, but there are some things I want to address. And one of those is this idea that the town told us what this was. That was not the case. The town called, and they monitor our budget like we do. I had been informed by our account supervisor that our salary line budgets was running a larger deficit than usual. If you know a school budget, in order to manage it, you have to do a lot of transfers, and you're allowed to carry a deficit in your salary lines. Last year at this time, it was $1.2 million. We finished the year okay. But it was larger than that, and I didn't know why. I didn't believe it. And so when I got a call from Lynn Savage at the town saying, well, your deficit is really large, and I said, I know, I'm trying to figure out why. So it wasn't that she brought it to our attention. It turns out that this year, for a lot of different reasons, you know, the tuition increases, the students that have been added have all added expenses that we had no control over. I thought, and the reason I hesitated on the salary part of the budget was because this is a 27 payroll year. And what we do is we divide by 27 people's salaries instead of 26 for those who get paid for the full year. And I thought it had to have something to do with that. And then, so we started working with the town and confirming that that actually was the correct number, and that's when we said, okay, what is the total now? And that's when we started working together, it became public, and we've gotten here since then. That's a really long introduction to this presentation, but thank you for listening. So the expenses are in-district special education, transportation. Transportation overall, you see the first three categories, homeless, out-of-district, and in-district, all almost $1 million in transportation increases. And that's rates, that's increased services. Homeless, as just an example, I put it in parentheses. We continue to get more students declared residents of North Andover, or the responsibility of North Andover, who are not living here, and we have to transport them back and forth, and for some of them it's $500 a day. We look for ways to do that a lot less, and sometimes we're successful and sometimes we're not. Out-of-district tuition, if you've been following the budget at all, you know that the state approved a 14% increase late last year for the placement schools, and indicated to not just us, but to everybody, that they would try to mitigate the impact on districts. That hasn't happened yet, and that was an impact of over $700,000. We've had some court decisions that have not gone in our favor, students that we did not believe were our responsibility, but the courts decided were, and were in residential placements. There was one last year at the end of the year that we were told, there's no way you're going to lose this case. You have to pay it, but you'll get that money back. Well, we didn't get the money back, and we're on the hook for next few years for that total. Circuit breaker reimbursement, like when the town budgets Chapter 70, they do it level funded. That's what we did, but that was less than it had been the previous year. And then ESSER funds, we thought we were going to finish last year with about $200,000 left of the couple million that we had used that year. We ended up having to use that to finish the year as well. And then repairs and maintenance have continued starting a couple of years ago with inflation and more frequency and need to impact us. Somebody also mentioned the 4 point, I forget the 4 point whatever they said on the overall budget. We have to budget every year with what are called offsets to our budget, and circuit breaker coming in and grants coming in, because the total amount that we spend in a given year is well over $60 million. It includes grants, it includes revolving accounts where tuitions come into, it includes donations that might come in. So we're well over $60 million. And I lost track of what I was going to say there. So those occur every year. We have to put together a general fund budget knowing that it has to be supplemented by these offsets, the money from the grants and the money from, for instance, the preschool revolving account. So we have to put together that budget, and even when we get a 5.5% increase, we still know some towns get their circuit breaker money, and it could be $2 million, and they get to just set it aside as a reserve. They do not have, they budget the full amount of tuition, out of district tuition for that year. We don't get to do that. We can only afford to budget three quarters of that, and then use circuit breakers to fund the rest. So that's the expense side. And I have to apologize if I am coming across as defensive, because it's the last thing I want to do. Like I said, this is my third night doing this, and I have to face some tough questions coming up. But there are parts I take full responsibility for this. And there are parts that the misinformation, like I said, I'm not trying to diminish the impact, but the misinformation bothers me, for what that's worth. Salaries. These are where we got hit on salaries this year, daily subs and long-term subs. We had an increased need for subs this year, especially in long-term subs. Those can be $20,000 or so per person who's out, and we had 38 long-term sub placements. The teaching assistants, and this is another one I have to take responsibility for. When we put the budget together last year, I optimistically thought that, and I know people will jump on the word optimistically when putting together a budget, thought we were going to be able to get back to pre-COVID levels of teaching assistants. But that just wasn't the case. We started the year with 69 new students on IEPs who had services we needed to provide for. So we just weren't able to do that. Extra hours, those are continuing to address student needs, whether it's before school or after school or even during school, people giving up their free time. Column increases, we did try to address this in the contract this year with the teachers. The frequency of people changing columns and moving up to the next level has jumped tremendously because of the ease with which to gain credits through courses like Idaho State online courses. So we try to put things in place that make it more rigorous to attain those credits, which should impact that number. It's interesting too, another thing I've heard is that, well, this is all due to the teacher contract, and that's absolutely not the case. The budget included a 2.5% increase for the teachers, and the additional 0.5% was an amount that the town manager had put aside as a reserve to cover that additional increase for this year. And then teachers covering extra classes. It's not a lot, but it actually was a savings for us because those were people who were willing to give up their preps and in order to avoid having to bring somebody in from the outside. So those were $1.739 million. And here are the offsets I talk about. This is something we count on every year other than the reserve negotiations that the town manager put aside, and that was $220,000. We charge food services indirect costs every year for the space and time of our custodians and the cost of utilities. And so those expenses come back and allow us to offset the expenses in our budget. Same with community programs, using our buildings. Food service noon attendants, the part of their employment that they spend covering lunches is covered by food services. The part they do in the covering recesses is covered by our budget. We journal entry at the end of the year once all the tuitions are in the preschool revolving account. We have a non-resident revolving account for those students who come in from outside our district and are in some of our special education programs because they don't have those programs and it costs them less. They have confidence in our program and it costs them less than doing out-of-district placement. Journal entry, a nursing grant covered some of the nursing salaries. Some of the expenses we had charged to the operating account actually could fall under the capital account that we have for exterior maintenance in the district. 240 grant, we hadn't yet accounted for 253 of that grant, so we were able to journal entry the additional expenses to there. The literacy grant, $11,000, and then the purchasing freeze we put in place we estimate will save us $200,000 for the rest of the year. So there's the expenses and the salaries in those offsets. You get the $3.122 million in the deficit. The plan that was put together, and as I have a bullet point at the end, but I'll say it now, the town has been tremendous in working with us to resolve this. I couldn't ask for somebody better to be working with than Melissa and Lynn, and they now have Kyle Warren, who's an accountant, a former accountant and Triton business manager, who is now their town accountant. They've been tremendous. So we thought we would get the $300,000 Amazon school money earlier in the year, but they had some delays. They're just waiting on a building inspection to pass a specific item, and then they had pledged to contribute $300,000 per year for 10 years to the North Andover schools. We just on Monday night had a select board approved ARPA funding for curriculum materials and professional development of $380,000. We had planned on putting that in earlier in the year, but we weren't sure the funds were going to be available. And then when they closed out some of the other projects and brought the money back, it left $380,000 that we could apply for. the Finance Committee reserve that was approved last night by the Finance Committee. We are very appreciative of that at $1.5 million. And then the Special Education Stabilization Fund has been sitting kind of dormant for the last few years. We haven't tapped into it. So it's just been sitting there at $750,000 and plus some interest it's been gaining. The town manager, that $220 you saw earlier to set aside for the 0.5% for the teachers was coming out of there. And then next year and the year after would be the rest of the money coming out to cover additional salaries. So this deficit requires us to request all of that money, and the Finance Committee approved that last night as well. The town has identified some surpluses they have in their budget of $126,000. The municipal department reductions, the town manager put a freeze on, as we have, will result in $179,809. And then the school department still needs to come up with 106 reductions, which we are working on. And that would cover the $3,122,000 deficit. The town manager also wanted people to be aware that as a result of this, she had planned on covering the August 8th storm deficit from the general fund, but will now have to do so with free cash to cover it. And that was, we all know the storm, but $252,000 in expenses from the town and $203,000 from the school were covered in that. So the timeline, this has been a sensitive issue for people. We've talked about the OSD increase that was going to impact the schools to the tune of about $700,000 right from last June when we heard the news. In November 16th, we normally do the first budget status report, October, early November. November 16th, we identified the pressure points we were seeing in the budget for the FY22 budget. And then we normally do the next one following the budget process, and the same night as the budget approval, February 1st. We estimated at that time to be $1.5 million. From that time, we were seeing, especially my account supervisor, was seeing the salary lines going higher in their deficit, and we were trying to figure that out. Got the call from Lynn, said, yes, we're working on that. Got together with them through March and into April, and worked with them to reconcile and confirm that those deficits were true and to provide accurate and final numbers of the deficit. They gave me the chance to go back and work with my account supervisor and say, okay, now that we've confirmed that, what's the number? And one of the things I've been saying is, and again, I take full responsibility for this, I thought mistakenly it was more important to get the number right because I didn't want to have to come back and say, well, I said it was this and it got bigger. So I was trying to wait till I had confidence in the number, and I should have just said something earlier. So then on April 2nd, we had a meeting with the town admin team, the school admin team to start to work on this. April 4th, and this is an expanded timeline, that the town manager worked with me on from last night to today. Meeting with town finance team and school finance team on April 4th, and then April 15th, I finally had what I thought I was confident was the right number, and we started working on the plan. Met with town and school again to come up with the plan. April 19th, the town manager sent out a letter I think a lot of people are familiar with, which is very consistent with this presentation. And the superintendent made a request to Finance Committee and for the reserve, and the ARPA application was put in. This week, April 22nd, presented to the Select Board, 24th presented to Finance Committee, and 25th presented to the School Committee. So key points, a lot of these are, as people have been saying, there's been a perfect storm this year, and I'm not a big fan of that term, but there is a lot going on this year. And I did mention last night, I won't mention it again tonight, I don't like to, but it's out there that I've had my own personal issues this year that I didn't want to admit could have impacted my performance, but in hindsight, certainly probably should have been asking for some help. And that's kind of where, you know, we could have done better with managing the salary expenses and also identifying the problem earlier. I did communicate that there would be a deficit. Again, this is another thing I didn't do a good job on in communicating the extent of it. I said that Melissa and I would kind of compare notes, so to speak, and say, yeah, she thought she'd have a deficit if it was going to be a bad winter. And I said, yeah, we're going to have a significant deficit too. But our definition of significant was definitely different, and I take ownership of that as well. Completely agree with the recommendation to do monthly reviews of the school department budget with the town manager and including the town accountant and the school committee chair. I think that's a great idea, and I welcome it. The town manager and her staff, as I said, have been tremendous. I welcome an audit and for people to gain confidence that this isn't indiscriminate. This was focused spending on identified needs. And we've begun the process of identifying necessary changes to the FY25 budget. I'll speak to some of that tonight. We were going to come on the May 9th school committee meeting, but I'm going to make a recommendation that we actually schedule something for next week if we can to finalize that. And then we have a plan going forward. The independent audit, by all means. We need to make necessary budget adjustments for the FY25 budget because those expenses aren't going away. They are continuing from here on out. We need to conduct the monthly burn rate reviews. That's the monthly meetings we talked about with town manager, staff, and the school committee chair. We need to report out those review findings to the school committee, finance committee, and select board. And then it was suggested last night, great idea, the town speaks very highly of ClearGov as a source for providing the public with information. We will avail ourselves of those services going forward. And that's the presentation.
Thank you.
Yep.
So we should be discussing that. So I'll open up the floor for questions, beginning with Vice Chairman Hinks.
Thank you. I do this work to ensure that we always do what's best for our kids. That is my foundation and my guidepost. And I've been reminded several times over the last few years that the school committee has three distinct responsibilities: supervise the superintendent, adopt a budget, develop policies. Tonight I'm going to frame my remarks around these categories. First, the terms of the superintendent's employment are a matter of public record and are posted on the HR section of the school system's website. Section D clearly identifies a process. This committee should strictly adhere to the outlined process. That will be my only comment on that matter. I encourage my colleagues to do this. Secondly, I want to talk about the budget. One of my frustrations is that for the past two budget cycles, the school committee was informed that we are unlike other districts. This administration had boasted about the historical budget increases that we have experienced the past few years, that our use of recovery money was wise, our strategy for incorporating those added positions into the operating budget was a success, and it was indicated that we are exceptional. Now, almost overnight, the messaging has drastically shifted, and it feels like our current struggles are being explained away as this is just what is happening all around us. First, we were told that we were exceptional, that other districts were not as financially savvy. Now we're being told differently. I would like to know what the real answer is. I'm also really frustrated with how this financial problem is being characterized by some as the fault of our students with an IEP or a result of an increase in our unhoused population. That stops now. Our students are our students. We're obligated to provide them, and every single one of them, a free and appropriate public education. It's a very clear mandate. The McKinney-Vento legislation was put into law in 1987. It is not new. Students who are unhoused deserve to stay enrolled in our district. They deserve to have daily transportation provided. To be clear, this is not a financial or legal obligation, but a moral one. It is what's best for our kids. This is not the fault of a few new families being welcomed into our community, or a family that can only find temporary shelter 40 miles away. Are there specific accounts that have been hit harder than others? Yes. Does it help us understand what happened? Surely. And Dr. Mealy, this is not directed at you at all. But I do get frustrated when other people simply dismiss this as another unfunded mandate from the state. The impact of that narrative shifts the blame onto our most vulnerable students, and that is wrong. To be clear, the budget we are currently discussing is the fiscal year 24 budget. It was presented to the school committee and voted on in February of 2023. No one at this table voted in favor of the budget in February 23. I'm the only member of this committee that was part of that discussion. I think this is an important piece of context and helps dictate the work that we must now undertake. This school committee needs to work thoroughly to understand what has happened and more importantly, be forward-thinking. I was at the select board meeting on Monday night. One of the questions that the town manager was asked was, what is the impact the recovery plan will have on the other departments in our town? Some of the possibilities include a delay in hiring a new patrol officer, a delay in hiring a new 911 emergency dispatcher, a delay in the fire department's planned update of smoke and fire alarms, a reduction in the DPW budget for repairing streets, sidewalks, and litter removal, some of the basic services our town ought to provide. That's just some of the potential impacts that we know so far, and I'm afraid that the list will get longer. My point is this: the budget overrun and deficit is going to directly impact every single resident in our town. So what will that impact be on our schools, our employees, and most importantly, our students? As of right now, our fiscal year 25 operating budget that has been approved by the school committee is $63,684,174, and it's already projected to have an overrun of $2.7 million. That means we're on track to spend over $66 million. At town meeting in a few weeks, we'll still ask the town to vote for the $63,684,000. But to ensure that the deficit does not happen, the schools will need to cut an estimated $2.7 million. What we need to figure out right now is how do we ensure that we only spend that amount that is being approved by town meeting? What services are going to be cut? Does the solution mean layoffs for teachers and staff or cutting positions? Frankly, I don't understand how it could not. Our teachers without professional status are at the most risk and likely lower on the salary scale. And as we are all aware, our salary scale is not where it should be. So who is going to be given this bad news because of this mistake? When? What will be the impact on them? What will be the impact on their family and their ability to pay for their rent or mortgage, their ability to make a car payment or buy food or pay the next utility bill or pay for health insurance? What if they have kids or other dependents? I'm worried about them because of this mistake. We need to make this plan as soon as possible. It's simply unfair to these employees. It's hiring season now. This is when positions are being posted. And if other districts are facing similar problems, facing layoffs, the very least we can do is make sure our people have as long of a runway as possible. I've heard from members of our community that they are worried about how this will impact their students' educational experience. Families are worried about their students with an IEP, their students with a 504. I worry about what this means for our elementary school libraries, our art, our music programs. In the past, when we faced financial difficulties, these are some of the things that are immediately targeted. These worries are real and understandable. Lastly, we need to create policies that allow for more transparency and accountability. Since I was elected to this committee, we have purposely worked to limit the number of times we have suspended the rules and voted on a motion after the first reading. We've been asked by this administration several times to take that action, and as everyone knows, I'm always hesitant. Rules and procedures exist for a reason, to make sure that we as a deliberative body make the best possible decision, that we are allowed to hold space for public comment, and that we are able to hold space for public comment either in person or via email. This matters to me. This week I've received several emails from our community, and I appreciate each one. At times we've been forced to take this action because if not, our students would have suffered. I realize at times it seems silly that I would make a stink about the order of a history courses being offered at the high school or authorizing an overnight field trip. But I make the stink because it ignores the responsibilities of this role. I make a stink because at the end of the day, I'm held accountable by the residents of this town to do my best to ensure that the schools serve our students well and that we do what's best for our kids. This mistake has put the select board, the financial committee, and the school committee in the very same predicament. If we don't take action immediately, our town suffers even more. The mistake has robbed us all of the opportunity to be deliberative. Problems were discovered, and yet only at the end of the process is the school committee being informed. So what is our path forward? What are the policies that we can build to protect our school system and ensure more transparency? Current practice allows transfers to be made among accounts. That is the latitude that the district has informed us they need to operate. I don't think we should remove that power, but I would suggest that the school committee receives a monthly report of what transfers have happened. Where's the money coming from, where's the money going to, and why? Secondly, it's important to protect our most important investment, our staff. The salary account should be encumbered immediately on July 1st. Furthermore, a transfer from a salary account can only be initiated with the explicit permission of the school committee. These are just the two suggestions I think we should start discussing. I wonder what else we can do. What other policies can we create to make sure that our district can move forward? Before I turn it over to my colleagues, I would like to say this. My commitment is to this town and to our students, is to proceed forward with an open mind, to lead with curiosity, and to allow space for all potential outcomes. In the end, that is what is best for our kids. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to open it up to the rest of the committee discussion.
Yes,
Alyssa.
I'd like to make a comment. I do have some questions. I don't disagree that our schools need more funding. I don't think that's a hidden secret. I would think all of my colleagues here on the school committee would love to see our schools funded more heavily than they have been in the past. I don't think any of us are arguing that point. For me, the point that I have an issue is the lack of transparency that has come through about the finances of the schools. The school committee, other town boards, town officers should not have been kept in the dark about this issue. It felt like a blindside. I did take the pleasure of going back to look at past updates so that I could fully understand where maybe we missed information, so that I could better understand where things went wrong or where there was information that was missed. Specifically, I went back to our February 1st, 2024 meeting where we did receive an update on the budget, where Dr. Mealy, as he said, had presented those pressure points of the out-of-district tuitions, circuit breaker reimbursement, the use of the ESSER funds in FY23, the salaries, column changes, and continuing maintenance costs. I don't think those categories were a surprise, as they were fairly presented to us in February. However, the numbers were a little bit different, just a mere 2 months post that. Looking at that meeting, we were told as a school committee that the town manager was aware of these pressure points and these deficits. At that point, they were roughly 1.4. Chair Brown at that point had asked if this would change much. We were told no. It's rare at this point of the year to see any significant change in these numbers. And if there was a change, it would be minor. When Chair Brown asked if this was going to be a surprise to the town manager, the answer was no, that there was meetings monthly with the town manager. In fact, Dr. Gilligan chimed in and said, "This is why we meet with her weekly." We had no reason to think otherwise than what was being told to us. We had no reason to think that the town manager was unaware of these deficits. We had no reason to think that it was substantially larger than it was. And for me, I'm trying to reconcile how just a mere 2 months later, that doubled. So, Dr. Mealy, can you please help me reconcile how in 2 months that doubled without that knowledge to the rest of the school committee, the town, and other public boards?
Yes, I've been discussing this all week. In the same, well, a couple of things. One, everything we do is, the first thing we say is for the students, as Joe was saying. But I have to tell you, the mistake was not asking for enough money. In last year for this year's budget, we didn't create these expenses. They exist. So we should have identified that we were going to need more and have asked for more. That didn't happen. Specific to your question, after that was when what I didn't want to believe and didn't believe was that the salaries were also a problem. And so when you add the salary deficit to the deficit we had identified, you're at the $3.1 million.
And looking at the issue, I don't think the issue is that we're in a deficit. As we know, as it's brought to this committee's attention, there are several schools in a deficit. To me, the significant difference is the transparency of it. It felt hidden, it felt buried, and it felt wrong, and I think it still feels that way. And I want to see our schools funded better. I want to see us not be in this position, but I also want to see more transparency. And I think that's the main issue at hand. Thank you.
Thank you. Ed?
I'd like to start. I think my understanding, good way to explain it. Is it working?
No. Yeah, go closer to the
All right.
mic.
Better? I think a good way, and the way I came to understand it, is epitomized by I think it's 16 paraprofessionals. As I understand it, they were on a federal grant or some sort of grant money. And when the grant ended, you kept them on. And you said, well, we kept them on because we needed them. In public sector finance, money isn't infinite. And we might all want more money, but in the short run, there is what there is. And what it felt, I wasn't around at that time, but it looks to me like what happened is that you and the superintendent decided you would keep them, and you had to know that that was $500,000 at the end of the year that wasn't going to be there. To me, there were a couple things you could have done. You could have said, well, we really need them. Let's cut something else. Or I guess you could have come to, and you could have informed the school committee. But you did neither. It's kind of like, in effect, you were saying, I'm going to decide to do this even though there isn't any money there. And then there are 2 or 3 other items like that where you say that they're inevitable, but the fact that it would be nice to have the money doesn't mean it's there. And I certainly heard the comments that people think the schools are underfunded. I think we all understand how school finance works in Massachusetts, which is if you want more money, you got to get a Prop 2.5 override. And the best way to make sure you never get it is to not manage your budget. So the only way to be in a position to credibly ask for more money is to make sure that you can manage the funds you've got. And that means that when you make a decision, and that was a decision on your part, you've got to fund it. And also, I don't understand it. Apparently, you didn't tell the school committee. I think that's a decision they should be part of. And I guess I kind of wonder, what does that say about your view of the partnership between the administration and the school committee, that you would make this decision unilaterally?
You asked me a question?
I did.
What does it say about the partnership?
I'm sorry?
You're asking me, what does it say about the partnership?
Well, what were you thinking when you said, I'm just going to keep spending this money even though I know it's not in the budget? And I'm not going to tell the school committee about it.
In any given year, and I'll preface every statement I make that it's interesting because one of the things that keeps coming up is that Dr. Gilligan is not taking any responsibility. He absolutely would with me and say, Jim, no, we're a team. This is our responsibility. I want to make that clear. But the teaching assistants is what we call them in particular. The principals and administrative staff can tell you that I did bring forward the need to cut those positions. And I was informed that the needs meant we need to have them. And that happens all the time, where...
But then you have to cut something else.
So, not always. And this year in particular, we can usually figure out a way to accommodate that somewhere else, but it just kept piling on and became impossible to do that. So again, I take full responsibility for that, but that's what happened.
But it appears from a distance that you didn't think that was important to share with the school committee.
I take responsibility for that.
I want to talk kind of supportive of what Joe said. Budget, I guess many of you know I used to be state budget director a long time ago. So to me, spending is policy. And with the short-term cuts, but particularly with the cuts we're going to have to make next year, I don't think of these as just sort of technical things that the budget staff does. I think that there should be a discussion with the school committee about the policy substance of what these cuts mean and of the choices we can make. And I guess I would say that if you're going to bring us a sort of a complete plan on the 25th, and that's the first we've heard of it, and expect us to vote on it, I'll be very uncomfortable. I think there should be some discussion about, are there some opportunities? What is the particular challenge? I mean, obviously class sizes will be somewhat larger. How do we deal with that? Are there other ways of addressing individual needs? And I would just hope this discussion is based on policy and not, sort of the minutia of the budget. And also, I think the reports, the first few reports I got were lists of, 10 pages of mostly $600 items, and I was asked whether it was okay for you to pay them. How would I know? And I was thinking to myself, well, what I really want to know is what's the total of these and how does this fit in? And I'd like them reported in a way that makes policy sense to me. Group them by subject. And then Joe also mentioned the transfer, and I think what he said makes a lot of sense. We need to have some sort of understanding. I don't want the school committee to make every single transfer decision. I want administration to make them, but I want them to make them in sort of sensible areas. And as I was sort of thinking about all this, it occurred to me that I personally am a fan of program budgeting. And in the school context, this would mean instead of budgeting, so much for this item and so much for that line item, you would say, what are the major programs? Who runs them? And we want to give that person a fair bit of flexibility. So you could, for example, say that each school is a program and that the money is appropriated to the superintendent, to the principal, and he or she, working with the superintendent and the deputy superintendent, can move the money around as long as they're not making long-term commitments. And I'd like to see us work in that direction, and this, as we think about the next year's budget, that would be a good place to start, in my view.
Is that it? Is there more? No? Okay. Kelly?
So in terms of being the last of my colleagues to speak on this, as well as having attended the Select Board and Finance Committee, most of my questions have been checked off my list so far. So actually, the first question I have is to my fellow committee members. When were you made aware of the $4.6 million deficit? I found out while I was notified. The superintendent called me. We didn't actually speak, but he called me on Friday the 19th at 1:17 p.m. That was the first I had heard. Granted, I'm one of the newest members, but that was the first I heard. It was on the 19th.
So I heard the day before that.
From the superintendent or from?
The exact sequence of events was I had a voicemail from the superintendent that I had not had a chance to return, and then the next call I got was for the select board member. Then I returned Dr. Gilligan's call, and you know, he didn't give me quite as much detail as the select board member had, and I was informed that the select board was going to be meeting on Monday night. The town manager report was going to include this very large deficit number.
Anyone else?
I heard only from a member of the select board, and I thought it was kind of odd. And then one of the questions I sent to the superintendent was, why did I learn about this from the select board and not the administration? And I did not receive an answer to that question.
I received a call on Friday, April 19th. I don't recall the exact time of day. It may have been late morning, early afternoon. That was the first I had heard of it, and as I reflected back on that, this was at a point when it had already been put on the select board agenda. It had already been discussed with being put on the finance committee agenda, which made what I felt like the school committee the last to know.
Wednesday, the 15th, I had a conversation with the superintendent. I was not told all of the numbers completely. I echo Ms. Koenig's remarks. I felt like we were the last to know. I didn't know about the 2.7 million until I read the available report for select board. And I think that echoes what our frustrations are, is that we were never part of any process for looking at this problem and being part of the solution. This feels very much like something that happened to us. I think that is a fair characterization when we're told in February of one thing, and then we find out after meetings have been held. That was discussed yesterday at the FinCom meeting, that meetings were held that entire week of vacation, that we are then informed at the end when the final number is discovered, Dr. Mealy on Sunday night at 10, and you have a meeting on Monday morning with the town manager at 9. And then there's still several days for us to be told that and to be instructed that the superintendent's working on a solution and will be informed of it, feels exclusionary, to say the very least. I think that's at the crux of the problem right now.
Thank you. And this is probably to the board as well. So given the town and school budget cuts that are on the table, are we planning on canceling our planned professional development that's coming up?
Well, we can discuss that.
Okay, that might be a place too.
I'm in support of canceling it.
I think that would be a good idea.
Unless it's on finance,
Yeah,
right? Like we should.
We'll have to make that formal, but
Okay,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
that would be something to consider. Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, and then one last question, Dr. Mealy. Why do you think the town manager and the town finance director had to find the deficit?
It's unfortunate if that is, I heard it and I thought it was just some conjecture on someone's part. It's unfortunate if that's a message that's coming from there. Because like I said, I was informed by my account supervisor, but I thought it was a mistake that we had to figure out where it was. And at close to the same time, I get a call from Lynn Savage saying, Jim, have you seen your salary account lines? They're in a sizable deficit. And I said, yes, I know. I don't think it's right. And then we worked together to confirm that it was. So I did not have to hear from them. And I have to make that clear because I keep getting asked that and I keep answering it, but that's the case.
Thank you for your viewpoint on that. I think it is one of those confusing points because we do hear two different items on that one. So depending on who you ask, is this to found the deficit. So I appreciate your viewpoint. Thank you, Dr. Mealy. And then just, I know I said that was one last question, but I do have one more. Apologize. So in order to finish out this year, how many student-facing positions will either need to be cut, class sizes changed, Or, will there be any positions cut for this year, whether through retirement or layoffs to finish this year?
No, that's not part of the plan.
Okay, but will there be any in FY '25?
There could be. Somebody was asking about the FY '25, and I think, Ed, you had said, I don't want to, have to make a decision this evening. What we are bringing forward is identifying the line items that and the amount we believe we need to cut in order to make budget. And then...
I'm sorry, which year? This year or next?
For FY '25.
Yeah, we do have a separate agenda.
Okay.
Excuse me one second. We do have a separate agenda
I'll
item
hold that one.
specifically for that.
Okay,
So if possible, I'd like to...
to hold that, okay.
To hold
I'm
that
just
for now,
eager
because
to make-
I haven't had a chance to speak
Oh,
yet, so.
I'm sorry.
But please continue and finish.
I have gotten through all of my questions. Thank you,
Okay.
Chairman.
So to be clear, I'm not going to repeat everything my colleagues have already quite well said, but I will tell you from a personal perspective, it was not good for me to hear from the Select Board on, I believe it was Thursday, it could have been last Wednesday, it's flying by now, that I had in truth, a $4.5 million deficit that I had no idea was existing. As far as I knew, on February 1st, we were told we were 1.5. We were told it was being worked. We were told that, in collaboration with the town, this happens every year, we're going to get to the bottom of it. And then I find out 5 days ago that it's really $4.5 million. And there's going to be, and the next thing I hear is, and we're going to be discussing it on Monday night at the Select Board meeting. And the next school committee meeting is tonight. So I felt quite blindsided. And I have to tell you that it's not a very pleasant place to be. I do think that, as far as I'm concerned, I think we need to monitor every expense from this point forward every 2 weeks during every pay period. I'm not waiting a month. I think we need to see it every time there's a payroll run and every time that there is an expense run. I'm sorry, but I think that's what one does in circumstances like this, in my experience. I have to tell you that I think there's a problem in our operations, because this should not be one person's ability to funnel this information. It should be automatic. I want to take a look at our operations, our financial operations system, to understand how this could be without flags going off, without alerts. I don't for a minute think that anything, by the way, I want to be very clear about this. I do appreciate very much, Jim, you're taking on responsibility and you're being honest with us and working hard. I do appreciate that. None of this is personal. None of this is done with malice. This is me taking on the responsibility I was elected to do, and that's what drove my actions. And again, as far as I'm concerned, through my experience, I think we need to, like I said, have every time there's any kind of check run, we need to be on top of that. It's not what I hope to do forever. I think it's a temporary thing, but I think we need to do it, at least until we're through this. I heard the other night a suggestion from the Finance Committee that we might consider forming a subcommittee, a finance subcommittee on this panel, on this board, and I think that's actually a pretty good idea. It's something we can do going forward to help stem this sort of thing from happening. Okay. With that, I think we should now move on to the next item, which is of great concern to me, which is next year's budget, fiscal year 25 budget, because...
Could I, sorry,
sure.
Just a quick question on this year's budget. The quicker we move, the better. Do you want to, if this is at some point, give us some indication of cuts that you've committed to the town manager? I think it's $100 and something thousand. Is that going to happen? Are we going to know? What do you have in mind, and when would we know about it?
So those are, as we close out our POs, those are items that we planned to purchase. It's not staff that we're letting go, and it's also working with our staff and the unions to find ways to more efficiently or save money in covering for different things that have to happen in our buildings. And they have expressed that willingness to work with us to do that.
All right, if we could now move on to the next item, which is update on projected FY25 budget deficit. And just to frame it, right, I mean, if we're over, if we're spending, actually, the first question is, if we didn't do anything, how far off would we be? Is there a way to determine that?
What I'm ready to present.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
So what we have is the different categories and what was originally budgeted, and I put in what we're showing to project for spending for FY24, and that's the number we're using to revise the FY25 budget. So you can see 403B match, 63,366. We're keeping with the 65,000. Some of these we're just tweaking a little bit the activities. We're projecting 14,188, so 15,000 instead of 17,782. Advertising, we've only done a small amount and don't need to do any for the rest of the year, so that's a area we can reduce. Auto mileage is covered in another line, so we can zero that one out. Award stays the same. The census is item that we have to pay $3,000 to the town every year. That stays the same. Conferences and meetings, we put that down a little bit. Contracted services, projecting $1,711,000, adding an inflation rate of 3% for the year, but then reducing by $171,475. If you recall, the town manager has agreed to take on the facilities items. That's contracted services for maintenance. It's also repairs and maintenance, and it's utilities. And it's nice because we have a lot of areas that can impact us each year in their fluctuation. So removing an item from the budget that is prone to some fluctuation is a good thing. Drama stays the same. Dues and memberships, we just, based on the projection, we reduce that. You can see the electricity. It's not that the money doesn't stay in the budget. The budget item is transferred. In addition to the exposure that we had, the money also is transferred. Equipment instructional replacement, again, based on the projection, we have that at $6,000, equipment $20,000, equipment rental lease copiers, that's our annual.
Jim, excuse me, are these deficits or are these total expenditures?
These are, what I'm showing you is these are the revised budget items that you would total up for the total amount for the budget.
This is the total for these items?
Correct.
So
Correct.
Are we actually really looking at a $7,800 item in a $60 million budget?
Well,
I mean, how do we make sense of this?
I'm not sure I can answer that question. How do you make sense? So we have, if you drilled down, you would have, let's say for instance, electricity would have 8 line items, and the account number would be the same except for location. So there'd be 9 accounts because we have central office as well. So the location number would be different, and you could see that we spend $150,000 at the middle school and $200,000 at the high school and so on.
I guess what I'm trying to get at is I would like the principals to be able to decide with these tiny categories how they spend the money, and I don't really think that we need to be spending time on which of these small accounts each principal thinks is more important for her school. And I'd rather see it aggregated so we're looking at numbers that have some real meaning in terms of like, is one school spending a lot, something like that. It just doesn't seem, it doesn't seem like a good use of our time, and it doesn't really tell us about people, our leaders' ability to manage their schools.
So what we've always done since even before I got here is we have what we call school allocations. So you'll see it in different, like general classroom supplies, and materials and supplies, educational materials. And each school we allocate, based on the number of students, the funds that they get.
can't we just report it that way? Was such and such a school had such and such an allowance and the principal spent it?
We can, right, yes, but for this evening, I was rolling them up so that we could see the total amount and easily see where our deficits are. We can
see it
certainly
in terms of
expand on
line
it.
items, but not in terms of programs. Ultimately, we're interested in programs. How are schools functioning, not whether a particular superintendent or principal wants a little more of X and a little less of Y. Why would we care about that?
I'm not sure, when you say programs, I am familiar with program budgeting. I did something called interest-based budgeting, and we identified different programs, one being
Right.
special education, another being athletics. So I'm very familiar with it. It didn't work well, but I am familiar with it. But we don't categorize our budget that way. As I said,
But that has to do not only with people understanding where we're actually spending our money, but it also has to do with the flexibility of a leader of a school to make decisions that work best for his school. The argument that we've always done it that way has never actually been one I was terribly fond of.
I think we do what you're asking us to do. So all of our building leaders have the budget. What Dr. Mealy is presenting tonight is traditionally the way that, I wasn't here, I worked in other districts, but traditionally the way that we would present a budget to the school committee, overall costs. And then, we certainly can look at what we allocate to each school, but once then each building principal has from those items, they have their school budgets. All of our school principals have the latitude to move items from one line item to another line item, depending on what they need for the school. Now, truly in true transparency, what we would want, and having been a former school principal, you try your best to make your line items be what you project they're going to be. But we all know, we've lived through life, that what we project is going to happen does not necessarily happen. So our principals obviously have that latitude to be able to move, or something else comes up, or if they're trying a new initiative within their schoolhouse, that system and structure is already in place.
To me, it would just be helpful if we then make budget decisions that way.
and we can certainly, I've always said to school committee members, if you want to see it in a different way, I will by all means provide it that way. I've always said that. I'm not usually taken up on it, but it sounds like I would be by you. So however you need to see it, I can provide that.
And is what Pam says right, that regardless of how you report it here, that as long as the principal stays within his or her overall total, you're okay with it?
That's correct. That's how
So then
I know how you feel about that, but
it would seem to me more meaningful if we then actually make the budget decisions that way. X school is going to get this much amount of money because of X, Y, and Z, and not.
I think you may be going to step two. I think I think what we're trying to do is present the amount of money that the school needs in order to operate all of the schools and all of the other functions. I think we all can agree that the school budget obviously supports our schools, and our schools, our leaders make the determination of what that budget will look like in their schoolhouse. But then there are other budget items that we need to take care of that may not be part of the schoolhouse. So I think I don't think anybody here disagrees with what you're saying. I think that you're just moving on to part B, where it's what we were asked to do tonight, right? So it's what we were asked to do was to present the way the school budget and what we order to make a balanced budget for next year. Given that we've already presented a school budget that has been approved by this board, what we would need now to make as deficits or ways that we would reduce it in order to make the budget moving forward.
Which is what we asked you to do. So if it's okay with you, Ed, I'd like him to continue. If it's okay with you, I'd like him to continue.
Yes, please.
Go ahead. Thank you, Jim.
Sorry, Chair, I just have a question about what's
Oh,
up there. if
sure.
That's okay.
Dr. Mealy, column B, I just want to confirm in column B that the projected number includes the deficit numbers. That's the total number. So it's our FY24 budget plus.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Correct, yes. And that's why we're coming up with the revised budget in order to meet that.
Thank you.
Yep. So the general classroom supplies, as we said, and I think it should be clear that they have, what they get are the funds to buy their materials and books, and they get to reallocate that each year for where the needs might be in the building. But their budget doesn't include the staff. That's just going to.
Maybe it should.
And that's a possible discussion, definitely.
I mean, why shouldn't the principal have some input into the balance in her school between staff? Well, but if you budget each of these line items separately, how do you then say to the principal it's okay to make, save money on supplies and hire another half-time teacher? Whatever.
Yes. It is something that we have thought about over the years, so it's worth discussing. Yes. And there you see heating fuel. Again, that one is moving to facilities. The homeless students, we had to increase that, as we've talked about. Legal services, that was high because of the negotiations that were ongoing, and we've got a reprieve from negotiations for a while. So we don't need that as high as it has been. Library books, we had increased that to the 21,000. Materials and supplies. This one is twofold why it's so much lower. One being that we had anticipated using the ARPA funding, and so made purchases based on that. And the second part being that we are confident, certainly hopeful, that this year we get the $300,000 from Amazon as part of the plan, but then we're confident that by next year we'll have that, so out of the operating budget we don't need to spend as much.
Dr. Mealy, just a question on the legal services. I know you mentioned in this year, the 102,000, and now it's going to drop down to 30.
Yes.
What was it in the previous year? I'm just trying to think, what's the trend? Like, it seems like the 102 was a spike, but should we be planning for another spike just so we're prepared?
No. We had quite a few negotiations going on this year. I mean, we would have had. They were started last year and they continued into this year, pretty extensive. And then we had a couple of groups that were scheduled for this year as well. The average each year is usually about 30,000 out of the operating and then 30,000 out of one of our SPED grants, special education grants.
So this year we had three contracts, right? We had to negotiate.
Well, we finished up the teachers,
Right.
and then we had administrative assistants and now custodial.
Okay, so this is something kind of a seasonal spike. We should not
Absolutely.
for next year, but in a couple.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We'll have to plan for it
Got it.
in a few
Okay.
years. Yes.
So did you, when move to facilities means the town's going to spend it, or it's going to show up somewhere else later on?
It will be in the facilities accounts that are a shared department between the school and town. So they'll take on, the money gets moved there, and now they have the responsibility for covering any expenses that have to come under that category.
And do we reimburse them for the share of those expenses that are ours?
So we don't reimburse them. What happens is at the end of the year we do, I'm sure you're familiar with the end of year report, the financial report. We would report it as indirect costs because it will no longer be in our operating budget.
But it's in our budget.
It's an indirect cost. It won't be in our budget starting next year. It will be in the facilities budget.
So does that mean that that in effect the town manager just gave us $500,000?
No.
Then I'm lost.
No. So we have had in our budget money to cover electricity, heating fuel, and some contracted services and such.
Right.
We are transferring that money out of our budget into the facilities budget, and now those items will be paid out of that facilities budget instead of ours.
Does that mean that our $63 million appropriation will be reduced by that amount?
That's what you can see right here. Yep.
Okay, thank you. That helps.
Okay. The other ones are smaller items that are pretty consistent with the projections. Another one that's repairs and maintenance. You can see that what we had been budgeting in the past, the $262,300 is going to facilities. And so, as I said, that was a pressure point in our budget, and now it will be a pressure point in the facilities budget instead of ours. Salaries custodians, we've accounted for the negotiated contract increase.
So just-
Salaries nurses accounts for that. The salaries other, and the salaries professional. We have put those where the salaries project to be for next year with the current staff. That will be reflected in the bottom line when we get down there. Somebody already seen that number.
So, Dr. Milley, just a question for something you went by. So I noticed there were a couple of the smaller items that were zeroed out for 25, for example, like periodicals.
Correct.
Was zeroed out. Who was going to get, was that periodicals, whose were those for? Like
schools.
What's going on? So the schools will no longer, like a newspaper subscription, the schools will no longer get for the students to look at kind of deal? Is that
Right, it might come out
example?
of their allocation account if they really need them.
Okay, but it wouldn't be funded here. It would, the schools would have to find.
It would be from
Other
their,
funds.
right, their allocation lines, yes.
And is it the same with software? Was that software for the schools or the 12?
That one, we didn't even spend anything out of that one. But we had been putting 1,200, and then if we don't spend anything, it would get transferred to
Offset.
cover
Okay.
another expense, yes. Software educational and licenses, we're assuming pretty close to the same as this year. Specialists, the same. Stipends, we lowered that. There are some things that we probably won't do, some groups that we might not have in the schools this year. We'll have to decide that. Summer help and summer school right around the same. I think, I'm talking to Marcy, that we can provide the same services for a little bit less than we did last year for the summer schools. The telephone is a utility that we do pay to the town. It's mostly for connection. Testing, about the same. Textbooks, about the same. Training and education, we'll probably have a little bit more than what we had last year, but less than we had budgeted. Transportation, that was a big pressure point this year. You can see it's 2,892. We've already identified one that we can decrease one big bus to do our routes, and we're working on one more. And so that's why it's 2,800 instead of 2,892.
So, sorry, another question, Dr. Mealy. So on the stipends, I believe you said you reduced it
Yes.
right now, suggesting a reduction, and that would, so there'd be less programs? Is that what you were
Could
saying?
be. So for instance, and I have to use an example, we have what we call the green team. That could be one that we don't do this year. We were questioning whether it was being effective anyway, so that might be something that we don't do next year.
Okay, so there's student programs that have a teacher
Correct.
or facility member that gets a stipend in order to
Exactly.
be the advisor or work with them. So they'd be the student programs that we wouldn't do.
Exactly. Yes.
Thank you.
And then tuition out of district, I think it might have been Joe who was saying 2.6. And the reason it's not that, Joe, is because we've gotten our preliminary circuit breaker number for next year at 2.6 instead of the 1.89 that we're at. So that's why you see that difference there. And we also have the 240 grant that we're able to charge some tuitions to as well. So you can see our original budget was the $63,684,174. When you take out the facilities items, it becomes $62,064,629. Right now, based on all of our expenses this year and projecting the salaries based on contracts and steps and columns, that's just over $64 million, which right now is a deficit of $1.942 million. So we have scheduled a meeting with the principals for Monday to work on this, and would request that we schedule a meeting of the school committee next week.
So Dr. Bailey, that means at your first crack, we've been able to identify some cost-saving measures, or that's, instead of being the 2.7 that was originally projected, you've figured out a way to make it only 1.9.
Well, as I said, that circuit breaker number, I didn't know what it was going to be. We've gotten that preliminary number, and that's $700,000 more than we had this year, sorry.
That's still a really big number. I'm still worried about this seems to be a lot of things in expenses. As you're like going back to the two main categories you had before, it seems like a lot in the expenses side, and I worry that what the other side will be if it's salaries, and that makes me very nervous. And I don't look forward to it, because I'm a little nervous and scared, but I'll certainly be part of that discussion next week.
Right. It's always been a challenge because as you have observed in meetings, the preponderance of our budget are salaries.
It's the largest item.
Yes, by far. Yes.
And I sincerely do worry about the people who work for us right now, finding out if we have a meeting next week and then we have to, but even if we do this on May 9th and we approve what happens forward, that means they've lost another couple weeks of being able to find suitable employment.
As do we. Yes.
Okay, would you mind scrolling back up? Some of these items have increased, right, from the original budget that we approved as a committee, right? I forget when now, but a few months ago, right? So some of these items now you're just re-estimating and they're worse.
Based on this year's spending.
Okay.
Yes.
So that accounts for why some of these numbers go up.
Correct.
Okay. And then I think I'm clear on the transfers out. So the transfers out take, so for where we were at 63.6, some of that's transferred out. Some of the items have gotten higher, and we land at 60. I guess I'm confused at the 64 versus the 62.
So if you look at the 63, 684,
yep.
That was, if we had kept all of those items in our budget, that was going to be our total.
That's what we voted on.
Correct.
Right.
And we're bringing to town meeting.
Correct. Taking them out means that we now have available to us a budget of 64,000.
That's what's going to be appropriated at town meeting based on our ask.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And then this is the amount that, if we project out everything we have right now.
If that was my ask
that would be
earlier,
the
if we
cost.
didn't do anything, we would be at 64, at that 60.
$64 million.
$4 million number.
Correct.
Okay, so that's our nut, so to speak, that we have to crack, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So knowing that, Dr. Milley, knowing that just the unexpected changes, as we talked about, and as you talked about for this school year, how confident are you in some of these numbers? Like, did you overestimate, underestimate, kind of where do you feel in level of confidence of these revised numbers?
I'm just stating facts. I am not blaming any particular area of our budget. We have pressure points, right? And we've seen them this year, and those could still be pressure points next year. So if we have changes or increases in transportation needs or in placements, if we get students that move in and they become North Andover students that need to be placed. So those are costs that we could incur that we don't know right now. But we still have those pressure points. In the past, we had the Special Education Stabilization Fund. And the purpose of that was to address, to some degree, we were only able to take $250 a year, and if we did take the $250, the next year was $150. The town manager was right in saying that that's not the right mechanism, and she advocated for not using that anymore, and let's do it through the Finance Committee Reserve Fund, which has greater flexibility and can accommodate more increases. I don't know if
Do
that
we
was the
budget?
answer.
I seem to remember that in last year's budget, there was a specific line item for a reserve. Do we have a specific line item where we say $500,000 is in reserve, we're not designated?
We have no reserve in our budget.
We have no reserve?
We have no reserve, no.
How can we possibly function that way?
We always have, and you know.
There's that line again.
Well, to be fair, we do the best with what we get. And, you know, it was said a few times, we have done a lot with less than other districts for a long time. And, you know, people talk about, people keep wanting to say that it's a $4.6 million deficit. It's not. It's 3.1 because we have those offsets. I call them offsets, and maybe that's why people think that, but those are there every year. The revolving account for the preschool has money come in. The athletic revolving account has fees coming in. So those pay expenses every year. We're responsible for providing what we provide every year with an operating budget that we get, and then these other accounts, the grants and the revolving accounts, and you put it all together, and we rob Peter to pay Paul all year in order to provide the services our students need.
I wasn't criticizing you. I was just saying that it's inconceivable to me that you would run a $60 million operation with obvious uncertainty and that there was no money that was put there to anticipate how you would deal with it.
There have been,
You're taking it as a criticism.
No,
I'm
sorry I did. I'm a little, yeah, it's been a really tough week. And of my own making for any of those who have no sympathy for me at all. But the way I have advocated over the years that we try to bump up the budget so that we capture all of our anticipated out-of-district tuition costs in the budget so that we have that buffer, so to speak, of the circuit breaker funding, that we're not counting on that to be our budget. I would love, but I've never been able to get that to happen. So yes, this year is the 15th year, worst year by far I've ever seen. But I will tell you, every year is stressful for me and my staff of how are we going to make this work? Because we have no flexibility, there's no buffer.
But isn't that a decision that we can make for ourselves? Are we not allowed to have a buffer? Or do we just never have done it?
So we could either, what are our options? We can either cut and not provide what we provide right now. We could ask for more money. Those are the two, right? And we have worked with the town managers over the years to get what we can without having to go for an override. It's always been, don't do it. Don't make that happen and make that happen in this community. That has always been kind of our marching orders. So we've gotten as much as we can each year to do what we can.
So I'm confused about one point. I thought you said that the circuit breaker is subtracted from the expenditure here. Is that? But then you said that these other, what you call offsets, I'd call them revenue. But are you saying that none of that revenue shows up in the budget, so all of it can be spent on overage?
So that's a good example. So take out of district tuition. We right now have a total of, and we're projecting to start the next year, $5,800,000 in out-of-district tuitions.
Okay.
We know we're getting $2.6 million from circuit breaker, and we know we have $2.6 million in our operating budget.
Okay.
Okay? And then we have a $240 grant that will capture the rest of those expenses. They cover some salaries for teaching assistants, transportation, some transportation costs. So you don't see the full cost of those because there are other things, but they're not, those other things aren't reserved for us.
So how about the revenue, what you call offsets? Are the expenditures in the budget gross?
So that's
and
similar.
And then the offsets aren't
that's
counted
similar.
as
So
revenue?
if I'm reporting administrative assistant salary expected to be a certain number, I have accounted for the fact that out of the preschool revolving account, we pay the secretary's, the administrative assistant's salary. So that number would be higher in the budget, but I'm covering it over there, so I don't have to carry it all in the budget.
Dr. Mealy, just to sort of build off the idea about the Special Ed Stabilization Fund, and I know the funding mechanism is changing, and I think that it could work better, and I thank the town manager for that. Yes, at times we have somebody move in, and then our costs go up, and it's there, and we're going to do what's right for the kids 100%. I think my problem right now is that we're never told that happens, right? It would be nice to know that school committee, we had somebody move in, it's going to cost us this, and now we're thinking about that. And we were given that information sort of in February, but when does it happen? I think it needs to be reported faster. It helps us understand the growing situation as we go through the year so we can be more mindful of the choices we're making. And part of me, and I want more money from schools. I will say that all the time. I've never going to shy away from that. But if I had known some of these things, I might have had to think differently about what the budget is that I just voted for in February.
Fair. I understand that.
And some of this information we should have known before then, and it would have affected how I saw our financial outlook and the things that I advocated for. I sat before this committee and said, I am excited that we have a level services budget. And right now I feel like I lied. I feel like I was not given the information to make that judgment. And I'll take accountability maybe for not asking all the right questions to get there. But I also put a lot of trust in the administration to help me make those decisions, to understand where we're going. And if I don't have the information, I can't make a good judgment and do what's best. And I feel like I'm in a position where I should have known those things. And I don't know if I would have voted differently on the budget for this year, but I could now question that. And it makes me sad that that's how I feel about what we now bring to town meeting, and now how I have to stand before the town and ask for this money. But if I don't, what do we do with for our kids? And I don't like being put in that position where I don't get to exercise be deliberative the way I am charged to do when elected to this position.
Yes, and I have acknowledged that I am responsible for that.
I don't know that.
All right. Any more questions on the presentation on the updated budget? All right.
I take it back. One more question. So we'll get, so usually we're saying, Dr. Milley, so you're going to meet with the principals, the school, and then next week, if we do decide to have a meeting next week, then we'll get to that kind of that next level of detail in terms of impacts and things like that.
Yes, we're meeting on Monday.
Okay.
Yes.
Awesome.
All right,
Thank you.
So if we were to schedule a meeting on Tuesday, would that be enough time for you to be ready to talk to us?
I'll have to compile the information we get out of that meeting. So I will commit to whatever date you guys decide after Monday.
All right. Well, just wanted to try to get ahead of it. Okay.
The decision would have to be made by
Friday.
By tomorrow.
Yeah.
Because we'd have to post.
We have
the
to
meeting.
post 48, obviously, 48 hours in advance. So, all right, we'll have to discuss that. We're going to get to that.
In terms of this meeting, we usually announce when our next meeting is. We had scheduled professional development for May 7th, and that is the time where we had all agreed as a committee that we were available for that. I think, Mr. Chair, I think it'd be important then that we cancel that session, and we just perhaps plan on having the next meeting at that time.
May 7th is...
Oh, wait, that's 2 weeks. I
Way out.
apologize. I withdraw those comments. I am sorry.
Yeah, I think we want to do it a lot sooner
That
than
was
that.
a lot, yes, that was wrong. I apologize.
No worries. I think we're going to, well,
Yep.
I guess in new business, we'll discuss that.
Yep.
I'm canceling that PD and when to appropriately meet. All right. Next item is, we're still in the chair's report, discussion on retaining the services of third-party auditor/firm to review budgets. Now,
Yes,
I have some information.
yes.
Okay, and in fact, I've got copies of it. Pass that to Alyssa, Jim. You may have to look over my shoulder, Marcy. I don't know if I made enough. You have enough?
You do. We can share.
All right. This is discussion, and we'll have to have a motion and so forth, but I just wanted to make everybody aware of this. So, yes. Well, we could.
I think that would be in order.
Do we need to vote on that?
That's at the chair's discretion.
All right.
How do we understand an amount for this?
Well,
We
my
gonna
vice chair
give
suggested...
guidance as to what roughly?
Yeah, and I was going to share this with the...
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
The public.
Well, you placed the question so it would be easier for you, didn't you?
Sorry?
Yeah,
Didn't you want me to sort of ask the question at this moment?
Yeah.
I think we should, Chair, respectfully, I think we should, before discussing either E or F in your chair's report, I think it would be appropriate for us to move up new business first. And move things around on the agenda is at the discretion of the chair.
All right. I think maybe it's okay with me. Does anyone see a problem with that?
Say it again. You were looking
Joe is
the other direction.
advocating, he's advocating moving up item 11, new business. 11A and B.
Oh.
To take those next rather, and then go back to the chair's report.
Oh, we're going to skip.
Just
this
changing
and
the
go
order.
right to here?
And if no one on the committee objects, I'm happy to do that. Everybody all right? Okay. All right, therefore we'll move to the new business part, 11A. Now, this is a discussion on placing the superintendent on paid administrative leave pursuant to Section D of his employment contract. And as I stated earlier, right, that is for discussion, and committee has to vote on it. Would anyone would you like to begin the discussion?
Yes, I'll start, sir. I greatly appreciate all the comments that the public made earlier tonight. And I really appreciate the manner in which the comments were given and the decorum that the community held, and the way we conducted ourselves. I am deeply appreciative of that. There was a lot of true things that were said. Dr. Gilligan is loved in this town, and we know he cares deeply about this town. Our function, I believe, as a board is to make sure we also do what's best for this town. And I've thought a lot about the actions what our responsibilities are and who we're responsible for and what our responsibilities are. And it doesn't make me happy, but I think that we need to allow the process that's outlined in the contract to unfold so that we can be certain as to how we've gotten here and what we missed, and do what's right for our town and for the parties involved. And it would give me great pleasure at the end to be that it has a positive outcome. And I pledge to maintain space as we go forward and lead with inquiry and have space for discovering and understanding what the results of what happens next. And the purpose of this, Mr. Brown, would be to place the to confirm your placement of the superintendent on paid administrative leave so that we can then, the next step would be to conduct an investigation.
Okay.
And then the investigation could lead to subsequent steps further down the road.
Correct. Okay.
Just to understand.
Alyssa, do you want to make any comments?
Yes. So, again, I echo Mr. Hicks' comments that I appreciate all of the public comments that have been made, all of the perspectives. I stand by what I had said earlier, that it's not a matter necessarily, in my perspective of a budget deficit, as much as the fiduciary duty and an honest duty to disclose, of having information kept that put everybody in a panic mode. That is just poor management in general, in my perspective. I have to agree that an investigation needs to take place. I don't view paid administrative leave as a disciplinary action. I believe this is a way to open up a way to fair and responsible investigation into the matter so that we can make a good decision for the schools going forward. That's my position.
Ed? No, Kelly?
So I concur with Mr. Hicks and Ms. Koenig on their comments. I do think putting the superintendent on administrative leave is the right decision at this point to allow us to go through the investigation process, not only into the budget, but kind of following processes and procedures. I support it.
Thank you. Mr. Ed?
I agree.
Further thoughts? All right. I want to echo all of what my colleagues said. I have tremendous respect for Dr. Gilligan, and I bear no personal issue at all. It's not a disciplinary action. I felt it was my duty to do what I did, and of course the board has the school committee has the ultimate decision, which is where we are tonight. I think it's the appropriate thing to do, and we're going to talk about how we're going to do it later, to investigate this matter. So I guess I would entertain a motion regarding this. If someone would like to make it.
So moved.
Okay. Second? Okay, so we have a motion, and can you, the motion is to?
Confirm the chair's action of putting the superintendent on paid administrative leave so that we may conduct a further investigation into the
budget deficit?
The surrounding the budget deficit, yeah.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, we'll vote. Mr. Hicks?
Yes.
Ms. Cormier?
Yes.
Mr. Moskovich?
Yes.
Ms. Koenig?
Yes.
The chair votes yes. All right. Part B, process for selecting and naming an acting superintendent during the paid leave period. Yeah. All right.
Okay.
All right. I have taken it on myself to ask a member of the current administration to take on this role, and that person has indicated a willingness to do so. That person is Ms. Lathrop. Just this is informational for the committee, right? That's just an option, okay, that we have. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Please.
I'm sure you all can imagine when I took this job in July, I never expected to be saying yes to this. I am a part of Dr. Gilligan's administrative team. I stand behind the decisions that this team has made before I came. It's the reason I came to North Andover, and the decisions that the team has made in the time that I have been here. I chose to leave a long-standing career as a building principal in a neighboring town. I had been there 14 years because North Andover had what I wanted as an administrator and as a leader. It's a town that I live in. It's a town that I once worked in. I wanted to be part of Dr. Gilligan's administrative team. And what's interesting about that is I don't think he'd ever really call it Dr. Gilligan's administrative team. I think he'd call it North Andover's administrative team, our administrative team. But I did want to be part of this team and the work that they do. In my short time that I've been here in 10 months, I have seen incredible leaders do incredible work. I have seen people who, we have all acknowledged that the budget here is low, and I have seen people work within those budgets and advocate for children. I think we have to remember that this is a place where we work with children. And our children's needs have changed. I have been an educator since 1989. Time is late, so I can't do the math, but I think it's a really long time. And in that time, I have seen the needs of children change. And we have weathered the storm through many things in education. But I have seen this team work very, very hard. I say to everybody who asks me, because I came from a town that had more money, and I had more staff. I had more staff in my elementary building than we have sometimes just leading here. But I say time and time again how incredible these people are and the work that they do with very little. And I say the same about the staff. I've had the opportunity to visit all the schools, to see our teachers, see them working very hard for children. And when they ask for something, they ask for it for kids. I guess I lost my train of thought a minute ago, and what I meant is that we work with children. We work with live human beings, with people who have needs. And it's, having been a principal, and maybe Dr. Gilligan once said to me, I have to learn to take my principal hat off, and it's really hard for me to do that. But having worked in schoolhouses, it's not just as easy to say, well, if you don't have the money for that teaching assistant, you can't have that teaching assistant. A principal has to make the decision then do I bring a substitute in? Because that child needs support, or that classroom needs support. I need to give that child a free and appropriate education. I need to give everybody else in that classroom a free and appropriate education. And so a principal makes that decision about, I'm going to hire a substitute. I'm going to bring an extra person in. It may not be budgeted for, but I'm going to do that. So in that vein, we all take responsibility. Jim, you've died on a sword here for a whole week. We all are on that sword with you because we make those decisions for kids. No one here thinks that we didn't make a mistake. Dr. Gilligan included. I know if he was standing right here, he would tell you that he made a mistake. And he takes full responsibility for his actions. He always has and he always will. We want to correct our mistakes. We want to move forward. When Dr. Gilligan called me to offer me this position, he said, I didn't know he was offering me the position at the time. He called me because he told me he had 3 questions he needed to ask me. It was a long process. He thought long and hard. He knew this was an important position. The first question he asked me is, are you really ready to give up the principalship? And I said, of course I am. He said, no, Pam, I want you to think about it. Being the principal, you have autonomy. You run that building, you're in charge. There is a thrill about being a principal. He's like, I know it's hard. He said, but it's also thrilling. Every accolade is yours. Every fun activity, every time your children succeed, you get to know the families. You are the person. You're the person on stage. You're the principal. He said, when you become central office, you are not on stage anymore. He said, you are working behind the scenes. You're supporting the people. People may not know your name, and he's right. I could walk into any school building, and there's a lot of people that don't know my name. And I said, yes, I am. I've done a long time as a building principal. I'm ready to work with grown-ups, with adults, working for kids. I want to be by your side working for kids in a different capacity. With that question, you know, he was really showing me that he lives and works by the Raise values. He, you know, made sure I knew what I was doing. He wasn't going to put somebody in this position who wanted to do something else. Second question he said to me is, I know you understand what an assistant superintendent is going to do. You answered all of those questions. You know about curriculum, you know about professional development, you know how to move a school forward. He said, but do you also know that it means when a teacher calls upon you and tells you, or a principal calls upon you and tells you that they're short-staffed, that it might mean that you have to go over to the building and help out, whether that be in the cafeteria, in the custodial area, in the classroom. He said, here in North Andover, when they call, we come. Whether it means serving pizza, helping on bus duty, whatever it takes. Are you ready to do that? I said, I can't wait to do that. That's what I always wanted when I was a principal. When I called, they came. And the third question was perhaps the hardest, and I didn't understand how hard it was going to be until this moment. He said to me, are you prepared at any given opportunity to step into the role of superintendent? And I said to him, Gilly, that's never going to happen. He said, I'm not joking, Pam. You have to be prepared. If I have learned anything through the gas crisis, this is Gilly talking, through the gas crisis, through COVID, through some of the other things that I have done as a superintendent, I understand that the assistant superintendent has to be ready to step in, and that we don't know what's going to happen from day to day. And if you're not ready to step up when you're asked, then you're not the person for the job. He said, because it will be the hardest decision that you may ever have to make. Because he said, we don't know. He said, we didn't know about COVID. We didn't know about the gas crisis. We didn't know. And if you are in that position, I can't tell you now why you might be in that position and what effect it might have on you. He said, but I need to know that when you're called upon, you will say yes. Because if you say yes, I will know that the children of North Andover will be served well, that students matters first, and that you will keep this team moving forward. And that's why I said yes when Chairperson Brown asked me.
Mr. Chair, I would make a motion to name Ms. Lathrop the acting superintendent during the paid leave period. And I wish we could put a time period on this. I hope it's swift, but I feel like maybe at the next meeting we can, or soon we'll be able to have a better timeline of events that guide us forward. But I guess the motion would be for the foreseeable future.
Thank you. There's a motion made.
I'll second.
Okay, so would I. So I think Alyssa was first. This motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion?
I would just echo Ms. Lathrop's comments that I think she will take care of the district well and continue to lead the leadership team in addressing the needs of our kids every day, and that in this moment that the schools will continue to be in good hands.
Thank you. And I echo those sentiments, and everything we do here is about educating the children and doing the best we can for the children of the district. That's our job. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, I'd like to proceed to a vote. Mr. Hicks?
Yes.
Ms. Koenig?
Yes.
Ms. Cormier?
Yes.
And Mr. Moskowitz?
Yes.
Dr. Moskowitz, sorry.
It's all right. Yes.
All right, the chair votes yes. So congratulations, Pam. Thank you. All right, now we're going to return to the chair's report. Item E. Okay. Now, This is what I handed out. So the background on the need for a review. North Andover Public Schools recently announced a large deficit close to the end of the fiscal year. That deficit has been alleviated using town funds. So what I have here is a draft of a scope of services that we could go outside to get in order to conduct an investigation and an audit. So,
Mr. Chair, so
Yes.
scope of services would allow us to put this out to bid, but we would also could use firms that are already contracted with the state, so we could expedite the process instead of doing a formal request for, is that correct? Am I explaining that correctly?
Believe
Dr.
so.
Mealy?
Oh, well.
That because there are firms that have state contracts already in place, we could select one of them for the work, and that goes faster.
Are you asking about the purchasing process for this?
Just in terms of using a firm
It
that
could
already...
be, those are exempt from the 30B, yes.
Bidding requirements, right.
Okay.
Right, so if we're
Thank
able to contract with the state-approved service provider, right?
And
Yeah.
it's much faster. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so, I feel like I should read the rest of
Yes,
this.
I'm sorry, I should not have interrupted you, I apologize.
So the North Andover, so this is a proposal for would have to become a motion. The North Andover Public Schools seeks to retain a professional consulting service to conduct an independent review of a personnel matter as well as a review of the circumstances that led to a budget deficit in the FY24 school department budget. The review shall also examine the FY25 budget to confirm the necessary cuts recommended by the district. The review may include face-to-face interviews with personnel and others, review of associated documents and accounts, written reports, and electronic file and computer content, and review of relevant policies and procedures of the North Andover Public Schools to ensure compliance with best practices, North Andover financial policies, and Massachusetts general laws. Upon completion of this review, the firm shall provide a comprehensive written report of its findings and conclusions to the chair of the school committee. The report also should include any recommendations made relative to the investigation as well as the operations of North Andover Public Schools. It shall be pursued and conducted independently and is determined necessary by the consultant to achieve a thorough and objective outcome. And I'll repeat the need for it is that the North Andover Public Schools recently announced a large deficit very close to the end of the fiscal year, and that deficit has been alleviated or using town funds.
So I had a discussion with the town manager about how to do this, and partly suggesting that it might make sense for us to have her help with the selection because it just looks a little more independent. And she pointed out to me that she does not operate under the same constraints that we do, and that might mean that we don't have to go through a formal bidding process, which I think would be a really good idea if that's true. And so my suggestion would be that we lay out, the scope of it, but ask her to bring us, say, 2 or 3 candidates. And also, I think we should offer that if there's something that the select board feels should be in the study, that would be fine with us as well.
Okay.
I wish I had taken, really good notes to make sure of pretty sure of the general idea, but it might be worthwhile if the group likes this idea, Mr. Chairman, for you to have a conversation with Melissa to just make sure you're comfortable with it.
All right.
Mr. Chair, I think I'm sure we could wordsmith the scope endlessly, but I think it outlines what we need to do to make sure that we operate fairly. So I think the general scope of services are here, but I would also ask that we partner with the town to help guide us in making sure that we are making the best choices possible.
Okay.
Chair, I would like to throw this into the mix for discussion.
Sure.
Of adding under the scopes of services, also recommendations of best practices moving forward as part of the scope of the audit. Since we have somebody currently, they'll be going into everything, taking a deep dive, not only resolving what's happened in the past, but moving forward to make the system better as a best practices. I would like to see that as part of the scope.
Okay? Go ahead.
I absolutely concur with Ms. Koenig talking about that, the best practices, not only in terms of the school budget and, looking at it against with Massachusetts general law and the North Andover financial policies, but also, I don't know if this would be appropriate within the scope, but in terms of what the school committee should be doing too, in terms of responsibilities with the budget along with the school department, so that we make sure that we're clearly outlined, we understand the policies and procedures that are in place and that we should be following.
So I also like the idea, and I would assume, I would like it to be understood that involves the way, not just how often, but the way that the administration conveys data to us. And I'd like them to at least address my suggestion that we move away from tiny little budget accounts to thinking about broad programs when we're talking about money, and their thoughts about how we might do that. Oh, and for that matter, whether they think it's a good idea.
So, and along those lines are the things I mentioned earlier that I would like to see as part of this, is like us developing a part of this should, in my opinion, be an operations review to catch systemic problems, right? That I think is kind of the same thing you're saying, or related anyway. But that I feel very strongly about, that we need to find a way, and perhaps it's ClearGov that was mentioned before. I'm not familiar with that, but maybe that's a mechanism that can do that. But something that ensure that the information isn't funneled through a single person, right?
Both things. That it doesn't flow only through a single person, but also that the data actually is meaningful.
Yeah, sure. So I'm trying to think.
That would apply not only to the monthly or semi-monthly, whatever we decide, reports, but also to the question about how does the school committee exercise its fiduciary responsibility to actually look at least very large items. I mean, I think having us look at hundreds of tiny items is silly. But there is a germ of truth here that's probably useful for one of us at least to take a look at the big items and say, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I think that, Mr. Moskovich, I think that could be covered in the idea of best practices and looking at our policies as well. How better can we operate? I think that's captured in those. Your ideas are very much captured in that.
So, any further thoughts on this? I think what we need to do is find a way to wrap a motion around this to make this happen. I don't want to spend a ton of time being super careful about the words, but perhaps if the committee would be comfortable, well, one possibility is we could make a motion considering the content here and adding a sentence or two. That would be one way to do it. Or if someone wants to make an alternative motion that kind of captures the spirit, that might be another way to do it. Any
thoughts? What was your suggestion? Is that it's late. Obviously, it would be kind of convenient. We've all agreed on the substance of it.
Right.
And Alyssa and Joe together have said things that I think all of us are comfortable with. Is it possible can we have them send us something by, 5 o'clock tomorrow afternoon and then vote on it? Or
we can't vote on it. We have to have that discussion in public. So could we make a motion to empower, I'm trying to think of how I would do it expeditiously, because I know time is of the essence, but I also don't like being rushed to do things.
Correct.
I'm wondering, can this wait till, if we do a meeting on Tuesday, can this wait till Tuesday? Can we have a meeting on Tuesday? I don't know. The answer to that can be no. Yeah, I'm just trying to, how do we?
Yeah, I mean, what we could do,
it seems like most of the suggestions that we had were captured in here.
Yeah.
In these words, we were just, at least I feel like what I heard was more highlighting particular points that Mr. Hicks, Ms. Koenig, and myself wanted to make sure were included. But okay. I believe they were, at least is how I'm looking at it, I think they were captured in these words. It was just kind of going a little deeper on the scope.
Mm-hmm. Yes, let's look at the second paragraph at the end of it. I think maybe you're right. Melissa, you were the one that said best practices, and I was thinking that was a great idea, but Kelly's
So
pointing
I'm
out
just-
that there it is. Is that,
No,
do you
I'm
think
looking at
that's
the
good
third
enough?
paragraph where it says the report should also include any recommendations made relative to the investigation, as well as the operations of the North Andover Public Schools. So there is a sentence that generally captures it. I don't know if we want to add something in there along the lines of the report should include any recommendations on policies and best practices moving forward, or if we want to leave it a little, just leave it
I
more
think if
broad.
we leave it vague, I mean, this is just a request for a scope, we can, if a firm is chosen, I imagine we can, in signing the contract, make sure the report reflects all the things we want it to reflect.
So perhaps a good way to do this would be to move it as written, but to empower the chair to request this. And it was earlier suggested that I considered approaching the town manager, right? So request the town manager to get bids to implement this. That should probably be part of the motion.
Or at least bids or whatever informal mechanism she's allowed to use.
Yeah, whatever mechanism she's allowed to use to get people to.
Right.
For us to consider, to implement
Perfect.
this. And then we would
Yes,
approve.
yes.
We would approve or not, that's those suggestions.
Sounds good to me.
And I think the other key part to this is putting a time frame on it, that this gets completed in 30 days. I mean, this is something that we should be able to find someone and do it in a short amount of time, so then appropriate decisions can be made at that point. So I think I think we should put maybe in discussion with the town manager, maybe if you can kind of figure out from her kind of what's that.
Ms. Cormier, the issue I have with that is it may limit the firm's availability and our choices if we're putting a very strict time frame on it, on those that are available to conduct it in that amount of time.
So maybe it's just that if the resources are available, that we do try to conduct it in a short amount of time, but if not, then we don't go with a lesser choice.
Could I suggest a friendly addition where we say it maybe at the bottom that
would you agree?
Expediency is or time is of the essence, and we should.
But not to quality, right?
Yeah.
There you go. I would agree with that.
All right.
I think the essence here, Mr. Chair, is captured everything we want. I think I'm comfortable moving forward with it, with those things as it's written. I think it's broad enough that it's general enough to get us what we need to make a good decision afterwards, but specific enough to give them a good idea of where to go.
So okay. So someone needs
I
to.
would be comfortable with language that says that, our preference would be 30 days, we're willing to consider 60, because that
When
really is
evaluating
important to
firms
do
are
it
given a
quickly.
list, are we allowed to request as part of that list a time frame of which that firm would be able to engage services?
Typically, yes. You can
Ask them for a schedule, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, when can you start? That can be one of the, when can you start? and
So
what would be
rather
the
than
length of
putting it in the
engagement?
scope, use it as a criteria in evaluating a selection.
I like that, yeah.
Yeah. And then we can decide, right? You can start fast but not do a good job, good scope.
So I think maybe, Mr. Chair, our goal is to authorize the chair to work with the town manager to seek a firm that meets the scope of services here.
That's exactly correct.
Okay. So is that what I want to say now?
Yes, I think it is.
Okay. I move that the select committee,
It's almost,
9:54.
yes.
I move that the school board empower the chair to work with the town manager to select or bring forth some recommendations of auditing firms that meet the scope of services as was presented on the paper and will be posted in the agenda, I imagine, after the meeting.
In as timely a manner as possible.
In the timeliest manner as possible.
I hope
Sorry,
that's
Michelle.
capturable on the, when she prepares the minutes. But yes, I think we all understand the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. The motion is made by Joe and seconded by Kelly. I'm using first names tonight, I'm sorry.
10 o'clock at night.
So, any further discussion? All right, I'd like to have a vote. Joe?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Alyssa?
Yes.
It's past my bedtime. And the chair votes yes. Okay. The next item I had I'd like to discuss and amend, when we were putting together the agenda, I thought of this is such a urgent matter that we ought to have a weekly review, but I've been informed that that doesn't make any sense because the payments are on a bi-weekly schedule, right? So having a weekly review wouldn't do any good in between. So I guess I would propose that we do it as opposed to waiting a whole month, as the town manager had recommended, that we do it every time we're cutting checks. So that would be a 2-week, that's every 2 weeks, is that correct? Yeah.
Twice a month for the
Okay.
So that would just be on our meeting schedule?
I was going to
at every
say,
one
can
of our
we,
meetings?
maybe the thing we need to do then is just add as a standing agenda item, a budget update to the school committee.
And so where we're going,
And I
where we are
believe
relative to
the
budget.
administration is okay with that.
All right.
I'm sorry, you're looking at 8F, is that where you are?
I'm at, yes. So,
Okay, you were turning the other way when you said that.
oh, I'm sorry, 8F.
Well, you can't turn both ways at once. No apologies necessary.
So I don't know if that actually needs to be a motion, but I suppose it should be.
But what is it that you're suggesting?
Well, I think the chair.
We have the discretion to do that, don't we?
I think this becomes an agenda item, that an understanding between the school committee and the administration that the agenda will include an update on the budget.
Okay.
And we typically, when the agenda is set, so we have the basic format, I think we just make sure we include
So
it as part of maybe we include it as part of the superintendent's report.
Okay.
And I think it's important as we do that, I think we need to figure out as a team what that needs to look at, so it look like, so we can all consume it in a reasonable basis, both at summary and detail, and then it also becomes part of the agenda so anyone else can consume it as well. So I think we've got to get there.
Yep. And I think in that consumable detail, Mrs. Cormier, including, and I'm sure you were going to do this, Dr. Mealy, like the burn rate, where we're projected to be, so we understand like the trend that's happening. But I think like just not the past year, but I know this is more work. Compared to last year is hard because we know it was very different. So if we include the year before, it would be right. And I know that if we can import that one extra column, it would be very helpful, I think.
Yeah, I would just suggest that.
And I know you're doing this you got an agreement with the select board to do it as well. So I think the formatting of it for everybody could be the same.
Oh, well, I was just going to suggest that we can work off of the first report and decide if we need to change the format or add or
I think that's fair.
Yeah, and I think what will be key is that it needs to be the same, because I think there was going to be the FinCom as well and everyone else. And I think we all need to be looking at the same thing, so you're not doing 5 versions.
Yeah, we don't want to make you do
everything
everything 3 times.
Yeah.
No, the intent was for it to be one report to all.
one report to all.
And it should be the one that we like.
It should be, yes.
So I have a technical question, which is it actually possible for you to do this on an every other week basis? I understand going forward, but you can't do this without history. And if you have all the history monthly and you don't have it semi-monthly, we're just kidding ourselves.
It can be a challenge in any if, for instance, the number of payrolls and the number of warrants that have occurred at that point are not the same as at that point last year. It can be a challenge. So what we usually would do is wait until the numbers were the same of both and say, okay, here we're comparing to the previous year.
Well, at the risk of seeming like of undermining extra detail, I personally think once a month is plenty, and that the extra time taken to do it every other week is not going to be there won't be an increase in quality that's worth it. That's just my view. I tell you what we could do is we could do it every month for a while, and then if during the summer when it really doesn't matter, and then if the group feels that it needs to be more often, it could be. But when you think about it, remember, he needs the history, and if the history isn't organized that way, it would be a huge amount of work to get it. You don't just look at the current year.
I think then perhaps the way to accommodate that idea is often, or at times on the agenda, we have a standing agenda item and we meet to set the agenda and then there's nothing there. And we
Oh, I definitely have,
don't
you
do
have
it.
the
So
standing
maybe
item.
we include it as a standing agenda item, and then when we meet, we have that determination made by the chair of whether or not if it's not appropriate for that meeting, that we understand that.
Right. I was going to go back to the suggestion you had made of running agenda item at all meetings. And I think what we can do is, everyone's interested in the burn rate, which is how are we spending and is it on track, which we can do every meeting. And then when it coincides with the previous year, we can provide that as well.
Okay, I like that. I was going to suggest
Thank
something along those lines where we do see the burn rate every meeting. When it makes sense to sync it up with past history, do that. Right? Because I'm actually more concerned with the immediate issue, right, than I am with, not that I'm not concerned about trends. Of course, it's important to know if something's seasonal or something is.
Well, that's the whole point.
Yeah.
This is a seasonal adjustment problem. I'm probably the only economist in the room. I've dealt with seasonal adjustment a lot.
Yeah.
And the only way to do it is with historical data.
Oh, of course, and in commercial world I come from, that's how it's done. But yes, you have to have
raw
historical
burn
data.
rates
But
don't mean much.
right. So I do like what you just said. So we'll make it a standing agenda item. It'll always include the burn rate, and it'll include the historical data when it's appropriate. And I don't think we need a motion on that.
I think more when it's available.
When it's available.
Then appropriate.
Yes. Fine. All right. Any further comments on that? Okay, great. School building committee updates.
Yes, sir. I'm just going to share the executive summary from the March. I did that last time. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do the 3-week look ahead. What's coming up for our middle school building? We're making good progress. I was unfortunately unable to attend last Tuesday's meeting, but they met and paid some invoices. It's exciting to select furniture and colors and locker colors and all those fun things that make it look pretty at the end, but the foundation, for anyone who's like grown up with a family in construction, the foundation and the piles of dirt and the steel also look very pretty to me. But we're moving on with installing masonry and doing the roofing and building the retaining wall and making sure that the fire systems are proper and safe and doing more interior framing on the second floor, and windows are we're scheduled to arrive this past week, and this is just great things are happening. I believe we had originally scheduled to do this middle school building committee was going to do a walkthrough this past time, but that's gotten pushed to May because they wanted to make sure we had stairs. Right now there's only ladders. So some of us are older and rickety and need to have stairs. But we'll get to do that next time, and I'll take some pictures and definitely share that with the committee. And as far as I know, we are on time and on budget. Oh, and we got to approve we were working through the technologies that's going to go in and all the fun systems that we have to upgrade and do, and it's going really well. Very exciting.
Thank you. Kittredge?
We have the design firm starting the process of getting some community feedback from the Kittredge community. Principal Cushing has sent out invitations for upcoming public forums and focus groups. The response so far has not been overwhelming, so I encourage anybody in the Kittredge community, if you've gotten that communication, please participate. It's really important to get your feedback. So that's in the next couple of months.
Dr. Mealy, are there any votes at town meeting in a few weeks relevant to the middle school building project and or the Kittredge one? Are we allocating any funds this year?
For the middle school?
For the middle school and or Kittredge?
I think we might have design money.
We might be paying for, we
for
might be
Kittredge,
allocating money
but
for design.
all the money for the middle school has been allocated.
Yep. So please come to town meeting to vote to design the new Kittredge building, or the renovation, or the addition, whatever it ends up being.
Yeah, I think we had done before we had needed to, and I'll have to confirm that, but I thought we might have already allocated at a previous town meeting the design money for
Okay.
Kittredge. I'll confirm that.
Yep. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that. Then next, we have old business. First piece of old business is the Crest Capital Fund limit increase request. And this is our second read and vote.
Mr. Chair, I move that the school committee vote to approve the request of Crest to increase their capital fund limit as requested.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second?
So what is a crest?
Crest
I understand in an ocean context.
Right, Crest is one of the local collaboratives that we work with to help do out-of-district placements for our students when necessary.
Oh, okay.
And they operate in
No,
several
I
districts.
understand what a collaborative is.
But they have a new executive, and they reviewed their financials, and right now they have a capital fund of $650,000, and they want to increase it to $2 million.
I remember this, yes.
But they need everyone's approval within 45 days.
Right, and it has no fiscal impact on North Andover.
And they do great things for us.
Yes, so it's for me, easy decision. But anyway, is there any, we have a motion and we have a second.
Moved and seconded.
Do we have any further discussion? If not, let's vote. I'm going to go this way. Ed?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Alyssa?
Yes.
I got your name right that time. And the chair votes yes. That's approved. Now, this one's the second read and vote on the Kittredge School Building Committee. So what I have to say here is that we misunderstood the town bylaw here. Because the School Building Committee is under is in Massachusetts School Building Authority. That's Part B of the town bylaw. For school building projects awarded funding via the Massachusetts School Building Authority, the School Building Committee shall be populated in accordance with 963 CMR 2.00 and may have additional voting and ex officio members as mandated. So if you want to search for 963 CMR 2.00, it says the school committee appoints a person.
Yeah, last time, Mr. Chair, I misread that, and I will take accountability for that. And because of that mistake, the select board did appoint the chair to temporarily, and we can keep it to the building committee because it had to be done. In our effort to make sure we didn't mess up MSBA rules, we almost messed up MSBA rules.
Yes,
and I apologize for that. It's something that it had the opposite effect of what we wanted. So thank you to the select board for doing that for us. So we can choose somebody else to replace the chair. Correct. Or we can keep the chair.
And as I mentioned last meeting, I'm personally interested in that, so I'm happy to serve if it pleases the committee. So we do need to vote, though, so thank you. Well, no, somebody needs to make a motion.
Second.
Oh, no, I'm not going to make the motion. Somebody else needs to make the motion.
I move that we ask you to serve.
All right, so Dr. Moskowitz is moving that I serve in that role.
Second.
Second, thank you. Any discussion? Okay, we'll go this way. Alyssa?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, appreciate that. Kittredge is near and dear to my heart. All three of my children were educated there.
I have a question which might qualify as old business. I seem to remember that there is something called an equity study floating around, and we're looking for ways to save money.
Yeah, so the equity...
Would it be appropriate to suggest that might be a candidate?
So the equity audit was an effort to make sure that the town did one and the schools participated, and they both hired outside firms to look at our systems and to make sure that we're doing everything we can to ensure an equitable education for our students and to offer suggestions on how we might do that better. We are still waiting for that report.
So is it too late? I guess what's worrying me is that it's not clear to me if equity is any different than meeting the needs of kids who are far behind, which we've just had a study about. And so I'm wondering whether this is money well spent.
I can address that.
It was money that we asked.
It was ARPA funding.
We went before Dr. Mealy went before the select board last year and made the request on behalf of the school department to use ARPA funding for it. It's already been paid for.
Right. To answer your question, it's well into the process, so too late. And
fine.
it's not coming out of the operating budget. It was a combined
That's all the answer
project.
I need.
And we're in the final stages.
All right, now, in terms of, I don't know how to classify this. I guess it's new business. We want to have a meeting next week. So I guess this goes under new business. I don't want to, I want it to be a productive meeting, right? So I don't want to rush it and make it impossible to meet. I personally would love to see it happen on Tuesday and file the, put the agenda together tomorrow, 48 hours and all that. But if that's too quickly, I don't want to, you know what I'm saying? I'm wondering if it's realistic and reasonable.
Yes, I could be ready for Tuesday.
Okay.
Are you sure?
Are you sure? It's meeting on Monday and spending the time with the principals and then just getting that plan into a presentation form.
Okay.
But yes.
All right.
We
We do very much appreciate that.
I would be available on Tuesday.
Is your question whether we're free Tuesday night?
Yeah, so we're talking about Tuesday night, yes.
How about doing it by show of hand? Or thumb?
Yeah, because we can call, I guess we have the authority to call a meeting whenever we want to, right?
As long as you post.
As long
as we post. But I just want to make sure we'll have a quorum, right? So, does that work? That works? That works?
Tuesday at 7, is that?
Yeah.
Yes.
And it'll be in the superintendent's conference room.
Okay. All right, so thank you for that. And
I was thinking,
the conference,
The main office. Yes.
central office conference room.
Yeah. We usually are.
Tuesday, 7 p.m., and that's April.
April 30th.
Thank you.
And we'll post the agenda tomorrow.
Yep. All right, so now we're back at public comment. If anyone,
Actually, Chairman, before we go to public comment, what about canceling our professional
oh,
development?
thank you.
I think it would be wise.
Yeah, I do too. I just don't think we don't need to vote on that. That's.
Someone just needs to cancel it.
I think we don't have to vote on that.
Yeah, I'll inform. I mean, we're all in agreement on that, yes.
So would that mean canceling not only the 2-hour meeting together, but the individual phone calls as well?
I think so. And we'll reach out to Tony, apologize, but given the crisis at hand, every penny's count, and we
Yep.
shouldn't be spending $1,300 out of our budget to. Oh, sorry, Helen. Money matters right now, and we should make sure that the money gets spent on our kiddos.
All right, I will let them know. Okay, now I think we're at public comment. Yes, public comment.
Well, before we go into public comment,
sorry.
I just want to make a quick thank you to all our high school students and custodial staff that have stayed late, who have set up the microphones and the lights and done everything for us to be able to be here tonight. This is a late night, especially for our high school students, so it's appreciated.
Thank you.
Yes, I concur. Thank you. All right, now we have public comment. Please.
For real.
Helen Picard, 447 Waverly Road. I wonder if any member of this committee asked to meet with the administration between the February presentation of the initial budget deficit and last week. Did anyone ask for more information or offer another set of eyes to explore this concern? I realize some of you were candidates at that time. As a school committee candidate, I met with Superintendent Price to ask my questions. I wonder what you think would happen if Dr. Gilligan were present during the audit or the investigation. I wonder if the auditor will have any questions for Dr. Gilligan and if it will be hindered in any way by his absence. I wonder if we will lose other valuable district leaders as we are further under-resourced in personnel in the absence of an assistant superintendent while the current assistant superintendent serves as an interim. I wonder if the interim superintendent will be expected to serve on the CREST board, or if the school committee will appoint a member to take that responsibility. I took that responsibility for 6 years, following 6 years by Stan Limpert. You ask a lot of your personnel during a period of tremendous workload. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Melissa Downey. I live at 6 Somerset Road, Woburn, Massachusetts. I have worked for this district for over 20 years at the high school. I want to take a moment and ask you to think of the repercussions that you have just occurred. I speak from a personal level. Placing anyone on administrative leave is a big decision that you have just occurred. But I ask you, did you do it for the sake of the students, the staff, or the community? What has that just done to all of us? The impact. I have sat and listened to every single person in this building. I have watched the presentations. But I know firsthand what this does to somebody. Not once did I hear any of you contemplate the physical, the emotional, or the mental damage that it does to the individual, the staff, or the community. I saw the PowerPoint presentation. I saw the deficit. I saw the numbers. I saw the staff beg for an audit. I listened to people be upset that they weren't informed first. If you want communication and you want to be able to be informed, be part of the solution. Do not react, be proactive. You asked a lot of us as your staff. We expect a lot of you as our school committee. I hope that you're going to support the person that you put just on administration leave. And I hope when you say you're going to do this in a timely manner, that you outline what that timely manner is. A week? 2 weeks? Because nobody should have to go through that torment when they were doing a job. And if it wasn't to your standards, outline what that standard is so you can do a better job next time. Understand that every action has a consequence, positive or negative. And if you want to work well, work together. Thank you for my time.
My name is Kyle Bruton. I live on 13 Perry Street, North Andover. And, oh, sorry. Oh, thank you. Yeah. My name is Kyle Bruton. I live on 13 Perry Street, North Andover, Mass. And I'm a student at the high school. I'm young, so this is my understanding of how the school committee works. It's threefold: hire, fire, evaluate the superintendent; 2, enact, review, establish policy; 3, review, establish, and ratify the budget. So my questions are also threefold. When is the last time a subcommittee was established to review all active policy, and is there a report showing the changes that were made? 2, when was the last time a subcommittee compromised a collection of members of the community who are parents, residents, who are financial professionals, excuse me, and members of the school committee to review and comment on the school budget specifically and compare line by line the variances year of year? And number 3, why, when a previous town manager for almost a decade ago who was able to project this deficit, was there no definitive action taken to curb the projected deficit and avoid an over $3 million debt hole? $3 million debt hole, excuse me. And don't give me I don't want a lame COVID excuse. As a student, I've lived through all of that everyone has. So I just want like a real definitive answer, and that's not hollow. Thank you.
Sure.
Hey, everybody. Adam Bagney, 92 Colonial Avenue. Pretty proud to follow a high school kid, by the way. That took a lot of guts for him to come up here. But I'm a resident and a parent. I'm in year 2 of 2 decades that my kids will be in our town school district. And I just want to say I appreciate the difficult decision that you all made tonight and may have to make down the road. You know, I've carefully watched the related meetings this week and tonight, and sort of the explanations from our school administrators regarding this deficit, and while I appreciate their ownership and an acknowledgement that they fell short in managing this year's budget, I think the bottom line is what a lot of you outlined. What happened is unacceptable, and as such, there needs to be significant accountability and repercussions. Our budget director has openly acknowledged he should have done better managing salaries. He did a poor job communicating what was happening, and he couldn't mitigate increases in expenses. Those three things, though, are the core tenets of his job. Those are his primary responsibilities. The budget director the budget cannot get away from me, as you acknowledged in your own words, sir, on Monday night. And I can tell you, as someone who's managed multi-million-dollar budgets, not as much as yours, admittedly, but I can tell you if I'm 5 or 6% over budget, I'm in big trouble, and our school department leader should be too. And for the chief executive, the superintendent, to either not be aware or not be transparent about this, and I mean, we're having this conversation in mid-late April, right? That signals to me that he was either negligent or asleep at the wheel, both of which are unacceptable. This is his department. This is his responsibility. This is why we pay him a hefty salary in excess of $200,000 to ensure that our kids get a good education by tackling difficult problems. And the one thing he hasn't done, despite what you said earlier, ma'am, is stand up and take responsibility. That's something a true leader does. And if you watched Monday night's select board meeting, you, sir, fell on the sword, and that just didn't happen. The explanations also just don't add up. I mean, other towns are not 6% over budget in FY24. They don't have 12.5 unbudgeted positions. They don't have $0 in a reserve fund. And there has to be a better way to transport a single student than $500 a day cost. But no matter the challenges, the budget is what it is, right? And now because of this mismanagement, we have this huge ripple effect with town departments being forced to cut their budgets by 10%. We have a hiring freeze for important positions that support town services. We're dipping into reserves that could have been spent to improve benefits for residents elsewhere, roads, parks, emergency services, list goes on. And all of this could have put the town's bond rating in jeopardy. So, again, I applaud you. I was glad to see the superintendent's been placed on leave, so a proper review can be done by an outside firm. I'll add, I'm a huge supporter of unions, particularly teachers' unions. I do think that our schools are absolutely underfunded, but that has nothing to do with this. And regardless of how good of a person Dr. Gilligan is, and I'm sure he is, this was a staggering fumble in mismanagement, as many of you acknowledged. So we'll see what comes from this review, but I think you all need to take a real hard look at whether or not we have the right people leading our school department, because I think right now it's a big question mark. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Gerald Brecker. I live at 488 Pleasant Street. It's been a long time since we had schools and kids in the public schools, but it's, as a citizen and taxpayer, it's a matter of concern to me what's gone on. And from what I hear tonight, I'm not sure that the schools are for $63 million, that as a taxpayer we're getting our money's worth on how the schools are run. I was surprised to hear that we don't have any reserve funds, that regular financial reporting is not available to the school committee, it sounds like. I mean, why don't we have a monthly, is there a monthly financial report? And today it was called to my attention, and this was quite surprising and shocking to me, that our deputy superintendent has been through this before. In the last town we worked, where all of a sudden a $4 million deficit was dumped on the town without prior notice. So this may come as a surprise to the school committee and to those of us who are paying the bills for all this, but it certainly didn't come as a surprise to the person who was responsible for it. I watched the video, and I'm glad that you took responsibility, Mr. Miller, but it's really remarkable that this is deja vu all over again, and it makes me wonder what sort of diligence we do when we hire people to run our schools. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, Corinne Roten, 13 Perry Street. Actually drove down to Maine, from Maine to be here tonight, so I'm sorry I was late. I missed a lot of the beginning, but been keeping up with what's been going on, and I did want to say this. There are a lot of mistakes and missteps that have happened and led to where we are today. But I don't think the fault lays fully on Superintendent Gilligan. It is the school committee's job, their charge, what the state declares their responsibility, to ask the right questions and get the right answers, to dig into the budget, to look line by line and do a comparison, I would say for the last 5 years. Go back 5 years, see what the variances are over each line item for those 5 years. Why is one higher than the other? Why is one lower than the other? What has changed? What are we doing? Is there something we're missing? I haven't been hearing a lot of those questions being asked by the school committee of the administration. It's the administration's job to supply that information to the school committee, right? And then you guys, as elected by the town, by all of us, right, to delve into that and figure it out. I'm not hearing that a lot of that happened, and that's kind of more of a concern. I echo what Helen said as well. You know, there's a couple of new faces on the board, right? So, and I've always advocated for, it's hard to be able to vote for a budget that you didn't really discuss all year long, and you only got about 2 months to vote it in for town meeting. So I get that, right? So the new faces, I understand that you are in a precarious predicament. But you also can go and ask the questions, like Helen said she talked to Dr. Price. I had questions with Dr. Marini a gazillion years ago, and Hoddle, and all those names that came along the way. You have to ask the questions. If you don't ask the questions, then you are not serving the town. And then we get stuck with the bill. And that is not okay. That is not okay at all. My 3 kids have gone through the school systems. My last one, you heard from him today. He's graduating this year. So I'm very happy about all that. But I still live here. And I will live here for a while. And this stuff really concerns me. So if I could just charge the school committee with one thing, go back to your roots. Ask the questions. Ask the questions that need to be asked. Even if you think they're stupid questions, right? We hear all the time where our teachers would tell us, there are no such thing as stupid questions, because they're not. Because you might be the only one asking it. But get the information. I encourage you all, get copies of the budget directly, not a PowerPoint that's interpreted by somebody else. Get copies of the budget and go through line by line and see where those variances are. And then ask your own questions about why they happened. And there may be very reasonable answers to it. Why is the circuit breaker reimbursement not being funded at the correct percentage that it's supposed to be? Who is going down to the State House to argue for, after 20 years they've been talking about redoing the foundation budget formula so that North Andover gets the correct amount of money that we should be getting from the state, because we send it to them, they should send it back. Who's asking those questions? Who's advocating? Who's talking to our state reps that are talking to the Senate House Ways and Means Committee and the House Ways and Means Committee so that they can work on their budget and do what they're supposed to be doing for our committee? Who is doing that? I would like to hear from the school committee, not Dr. Gilligan, not Dr. Mealy, not anybody else. I want to hear from the school committee. What are you guys doing to do that? That's the kind of stuff that really makes a difference when we have budget shortfalls. Because what do you have for an alternative? You're looking at everybody in this community and saying, guess what, you get to pay more. Well, that's not okay either. I want to know who's asking the questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And that concludes the agenda. Someone would like to make the motion to adjourn, I'd be thrilled.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
A second.
It's not debatable.
Yes.
Ed? Kelly?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Melissa?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, we are adjourned.
Lights went off at the same time.
That was.
I think they're saying get